we ready? Are the mics on? It doesn't sound like mine's on, though.
No, I turned them all off.
Oh, okay.
You have to press the button.
Is it on? It's not on. It's showing unmuted.
I'm not kicking you out. You have to stick around for this. One, two, one, two, one, two. One, two, one, two. I think it's on. Hello, hello.
Testing.
Nope. Okay. Then I'll quit tapping my microphone to save you that.
Testing. There we go.
One, two. Yep.
You able to get that figured out? Okay. Okay, sorry for the delay. Thank you for your patience. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I would like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Meridian Planning and Zoning Commission for September 19th, 2019. Let's begin with roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Holland?
Here.
Commissioner Seal?
Here.
Commissioner, Fitzgerald?
I have returned, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Commissioner Casanelli?
Here. Yes.
Commissioner Perot?
Here.
Absent are Commissioners Olson and McCarville.
Thank you. At this time, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is the consent agenda. Letter A, findings of fact, conclusions of law for Elevate Franklin Storage, H20190076 by 10 Mile Development. Could I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. Second.
It has been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, I'm going to hold off on explaining the public hearing process until after we go through section or item number 4, excuse me, which is the new comp plan update and the open space survey discussion, so that process is fresh in everybody's minds before we take public testimony. So if the staff would like to proceed with those, that would be fantastic.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Caleb Hood, Planning Division Manager for the city. It's my pleasure tonight, before we jump into the items A and B on your agenda, I wanted to introduce you to Tori Cleary. Comes to us from Orange, California. She was our new Economic Development Administrator. So very happy to have her. It's a position we've been searching for a while. And real happy. She's in day 4 now, so take it easy on her today if you have any questions for her. First week. But so far, she's come in, hit the ground running. We had an employee recently that used the analogy, it's like drinking from a fire hose, but it's got sweet, sweet Kool-Aid. So she's really, I'm sure she's trying to take it all in, and that's a bit much, but she's trying to do that. So anyways, I'll let her maybe introduce a little bit more about herself, but if you would join me in welcoming her anyways to the team.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the Commission,
Yes, as Caleb said, I come from Orange, California, where I was a redevelopment and economic development project manager. Worked on everything from bringing in industrial businesses, service businesses, and we also had a downtown that was very similar to Meridian. So it's very exciting for me to see the opportunities that are here. In fact, it's just exciting to be here at a place where you really do have a lot of enviable opportunities, and I look forward to implementing some of the strategies that are contained in the comprehensive plan, the city strategic plan, and economic development strategy. You've got some really good planning documents in place for me to follow, and just hope I can bring back some successes. So, thank you.
Your mic.
Can I have you all turn your mics on? Your mics, don't turn them off.
Okay.
All right, so thank you. We'll jump in then to the official agenda here. Again, Caleb Hood, Brian McClure, and in planning. Brian has been the project manager on the comprehensive plan. So we're gonna kind of tag team this a little bit, but we've both been working on it for the past couple of years, but he's really been every step of the way involved in this thing. So I've just been more participating and kind of watching things. But in advance of the public hearing you all are going to have here in about a month, October 17th is that hearing date. We wanted to review with you and basically close out the existing comprehensive plan that we have, although it's still going to be in effect until the City Council adopts a new comprehensive plan. But we're trying to kind of separate some of the existing things from the new future things that we'll be talking about here next month. And rather than bogging down that public hearing with trying to do both, we thought it'd be a good opportunity to come in again, close out kind of the existing comprehensive plan, and then cover some of the process and timeline of what we've been doing on the comprehensive plan. I know we've been here a couple times, so hopefully you're like, what? We're developing a new comprehensive plan? I didn't know. But we're getting to the finish line, so we wanted to, again, touch base and kind of run through that all again with you so you're as comfortable as possible going into that public hearing here. All right, so the current plan, this slide or some version of the slide we've actually shown to you before, but the current comprehensive plan, the policies contained therein, was largely adopted in 2002. Most of that work was done in 1999, 2000, even into 2001. Not the same community we were back then. We even did a major reformat and update in 2010, 2011, adopted in 11. Again, we've changed pretty significantly in that since that amount of time too. And we do touch it, so we thought as staff it's pretty current. But there's been enough change in our community and new folks in our community and businesses in our community where the mayor and council about 18 months ago said we need to start over and basically develop a new plan. So again, that's what we've been working on for the last 18 months or so, or even really closer to 2 years. We envision keeping the same structure where we have the comprehensive plan itself that has the forward-looking policies and things you're familiar with in staff reports. And then having the existing conditions report that talks about who we are as a community, a lot of the demographics, information on our parks, and how many fire departments we have, or fire stations we have, and things like that. So we envision keeping that structure, but the new plan will have a little bit different format, and we'll get into that again with the new, when we talk about the new plan more. As part of this hearing tonight, we did send you a memo and an attachment that had 69 pages worth of policies. So let's get going on those. No, we sent them to you. There was a clarifying question earlier. Hey, what's the expectation for tonight? Wanted to make it just available to you. If there's any one or two or three that you really had an affinity to historically and you want to make sure that shows up in the new plan, we can just verify that, or it's there so you can see how they've changed, been modified, or removed, or are continuing on. So I'll kind of pause and see if there are any of those you really want to get into. That wasn't my intent tonight to go through that page by page or line item by line item, but we can if you have any questions about any of the existing policies in the plan.
Commissioners, is there anything burning this evening that we want to discuss? Okay, thank you.
Okay. So a little bit more then on plan development process and some of the milestones we've had. So we did hire Logan Simpson out of Fort Collins, Colorado, to be our consultant on this project. We had 3, I think, proposals that were submitted and interviewed those teams, and this team was selected. This certainly doesn't cover everything in the scope of work they have with the city, but they did have 2 subs on the project. So Leland did a lot of the market analysis, and then Kittleson Associates, who's has a Boise office, helped on some of the transportation corridor analysis. But just a few of the things that they really helped us move forward was public involvement and developing a project website. The steering committee agendas and milestones. We heard comments earlier this week that was a positive takeaway, that they really kind of kept us on track. We knew what to expect as a steering committee. Here's what we're trying to accomplish this month. This is where we need to be next month, and even looking at the quarter after that. So there were some goals that were set up to keep the project kind of on time. And then they've been tracking and help developing the draft plan and getting ready to turn that over to us. There's a couple of other deliverables we'll talk about here in a minute too. But so we did set up a steering committee. The mayor basically invited 22 community members to meet monthly with us and oversee the project. We had stakeholders with all kinds of different backgrounds. We had agency representatives, ACHD, the school district, Ada County, residents, commercial real estate brokers, engineers, developers. So pretty, as you can imagine, we didn't always agree on everything, but some good dialogue, and again, kind of what we talked about a little bit as we did our final steering committee meeting. There's passion and appreciation and a respect that we still had for each other. So it was a good group to work with. That group, then we kind of broke up, and I don't think all members of that served on a focus group, but there were 4 areas that we really dug down into more of the weeds on than others. Community design, economic development, housing and transportation, housing and transportation. That wasn't one group. So I facilitated the transportation group. Brian did community design and housing, and then Cameron did economic development. So each one of those kind of subcommittees, again, looked at markets, looked at corridors, really tried to help understand what those policies might be to drive our community forward. And then some map changes, too, were also talked about with those focus groups. So the draft plan that you're going to see on the 17th is the steering committee's recommended comprehensive plan. We're going to write a staff report like we would any other application. So we might be recommending some tweaks to it, but essentially what you'll be reviewing is the community's plan. It's what we've been doing with our stakeholders for the past 18 months. And it's really, again, at this point, something that we think largely represents what we heard from the public. I'll jump down to the last sub-bullet there under public outreach. No, not 100% of everyone agrees with it, though. Community of 120,000 people, you're going to have some people here that are going to want to address something with you because they're not happy about something. But I think we've done a pretty good job of gaining consensus, understanding what the needs are, and generally portraying a vision for our community that is representative of most all. And I think, again, what you'll hear during that hearing is the folks that do come are probably not going to talk about the policies. They're going to talk about a change they want to the future land use map on their property or their neighbor's property or something. So, but again, we did extensive public outreach, engaged with the website, used our communication staff up in the mayor's office to help us get the word out to anybody that was interested, that were here and who want to hear from you. Again, here's kind of a higher level scope of work. So before we hired Logan Simpson, the council, again, I mentioned, said, hey, go develop this plan. You had 2 years to get it done. We started as staff before even getting going with, putting together the RFP, but doing an audit of our plans, looking at some of the existing studies and whatnot, just making sure we had a good foundation to move forward with developing a new plan. I don't need to read the whole slide to you, I guess. So there's some more of the key focus elements, and then those focus areas I mentioned: strategic growth management and public services, and there'll be a little bit more on that too. But where are existing services, and where do we envision future services so that there can be orderly development of our community? and then a comprehensive impact of growth. And the council had a joint meeting with Ada County earlier this week and had a little bit of talk about that impact of growth, not just on Meridian, but on the valley, on Ada Canyon County, and some of the costs of growth. And then transportation and economic development. I know you all have been driving the roads around here and they're becoming more and more congested. That's what we hear about and the complaints we get with growth. And so what can we do as a community to the best we can work with our transportation friends and make sure that the network is as robust as possible, as safe as possible, can still move goods and services and people as efficiently as possible. So we've developed a master mobility map, and I'll show you a slide on that too in a minute. And then there were 4 areas that we called out in the contract with Logan Simpson to look at. That's the field, so that's in northwest Meridian, kind of on the other side of future State Highway 16. Southwest, so south of the freeway, generally west of Linder. The southern rim, which is that rim that kind of basically goes from 10 Mile Overland at roughly a 45-degree angle down to Boise Ranch Golf Course, basically, to kind of, if you can see that picture there in your mind. And then what we call Magic Bridge. Magic View Drive, Woodbridge subdivision, you put them together, you got a Magic Bridge. So that area, basically, Eagle, Locust Grove, Franklin, and I-84, kind of that section right in there. Kind of behind the hotels and some of the medical office complex. There's some areas back in there that just have been stagnant. And so we really wanted to look at that. What can we do to maybe facilitate development or redevelopment of some of those parcels back there? So anyways, we asked them to look at some of that too. And then I already touched on the focus groups. And obviously we have to comply with Idaho code for developing a comprehensive plan. Here's the timeline. I don't think I really have anything to note. I've kind of been rambling on about the timeline throughout my part of the presentation so far. So we'll jump to that master mobility map that I mentioned just on the previous slide. So basically what this does is it takes all, ACHD, ITD, VRT, city's pathway network, and puts it all in one place. So we have access to the existing conditions, so we know where the existing sidewalks are, the existing bus stops, the existing, again, street-related infrastructure and services, and then the plans that those agencies have for the next up to 20 years. No one's really planning outside of 20 years, but the idea with this is that we take that information we have now, and then we as a city develop what the next round of infrastructure should be, so that those agencies inherit what we've developed as a community, what we want those roads to look like as they look to the next 5 years out after they build the first 5 years and they're still in 20-year buckets. But we have a plan for what we want those roads to look like and bus routes to look like and whatever. So it kind of puts it in one place. And then if you're a business owner or a resident and you're like, I'd like to buy a house there, but this road's 2 lanes wide, you can go to this, you could look at it, okay, it's supposed to be widened in the next 10 years or whatever. So there's different ways you could use this. It is also consistent with the city's strategic plan. It is a GIS-based document, so we'll have to maintain it. But again, we brought it all kind of in-house, so it's all the transportation-related things are in one place. So I'm pretty excited about this tool, and we'll need to work on it. But it's I think just out the gate even will be helpful. I should mention if there's any questions along the way, feel free to interrupt too.
I'm Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli.
Caleb, I actually have a question.
All right.
Was ACHD and ITD part of especially the transportation?
Yeah, absolutely, Madam Chair. Justin Lucas was a pretty regular member on both the steering committee, so the 14 meetings we had, and then on the focus group. I don't recall if you missed maybe one of those focus group meetings, but yeah, they were definitely at the table. And I've gone to ACHD too and talked to their commission about this project and kept them up to speed on what we're doing in developing these things. And that even kind of segues into, maybe not the next slide, 2 slides from now, I'll come back to ACHD too.
Before we proceed, I'd like the record to show that Commissioner McCarville is now present. Thank you.
And this one I'll probably breeze through really quick, but we have a Meridian welcome to Meridian signage plan. We've historically had it, although the plan has been more of a map than a plan. And so that was some of what the council requested was, hey, go develop some text that explains why this map exists, where we're going to put these signs over time. So that's what we've done is Yeah, but why do we have the signage plan? How do we plan to implement it? What are the specifications for when you put a sign up? So this isn't in the comprehensive plan, but it's alluded to in the comprehensive plan. So just so you're aware, we will have a Welcome to Meridian signage plan pending council approval of a resolution. So this is the slide, the service impact tool. So this is one where we worked with ACHD. Primarily, this shows relationship of services to any given parcel within our area of impact. So it's a heat map. So the redder the parcel, the orange or darker the red, the darker the orange, the more services are either directly adjacent or close proximity to that particular parcel. So things like sewer, water, schools, pathways, roads, and again, you get points, if you will, or a darker color. If the roadway is already widened to 5 roads, you get, full points. If it's planned to be widened in the next 5 years, you get 2 or 3 points. If it's in the 20-year plan, you get 1 point or a negative point. So it's meant to show, are the services there now that you need? Are they coming in the foreseeable future, or are they further out? And I'm just using that to kind of show you how that scale generally works. Same with pathways. Is there a pathway there? Is it in our plans to put a pathway there? Are there schools there? Is there capacity there? Those types of things. And even schools as an example, not so much the capacity, but using the schools even as community gathering places and access to them. Can you, are they within 2 miles, or use it as a de facto park? So we've developed this, again, primarily to look at the readiness of any parcel to develop or redevelop within the city versus further and further out with some of those services, fire, police response times, those types of things. How close are you to being within a 5-minute response time of any given fire station? So we've worked with police and fire and ACHD and others, but mainly it's city services. Doesn't look at Idaho Power and what power may be to a site. So as a developer, you can't just go to this and go, oh, I'm going to go get, there's other things that definitely need to be considered if you're going to be looking to develop a parcel. But generally, this shows maybe where we should invest some more, or work with our school district or our ACHD and say, boy, we have a lot of these facilities here, but school's lacking. Boy, if we could get a school up there or two, this makes sense for us to incentivize and maybe direct growth there. We haven't gone there yet, but those are some of the things we're hearing from the community, and some of the things even in the new plan that are alluded to. Explore these partnerships to direct growth where you want it to go, not just react to wherever it wants to go, but what can you provide that incentivizes development to come, because you've got that quality of life that comes along with the rooftop or the business. So definitely more to come on that. But this is a tool that we thought we could use, and you'll see some of the output of this. You'll actually see in your staff reports in that table on the page 1 and 2. We'll use some of that to kind of and you get some of it now. Again, location of sewer, location of water. It tells you general proximity. But we'll use, probably not a pretty picture like this, but we'll use some of that information in your staff reports too. But it's not it won't tell you if you should approve a project or not. So that's not what this does. It doesn't say this is a good project or a bad project if you just approve it or not. It just tells you what the relationship is geographically to any one of those services.
Madam Chair. Oh, go right ahead, sir.
Mr. Fitzgerald.
Caleb, random question. Are all the blue outlined, are those enclaves of county enclaves inside of the city? Or what are the little chunks inside of those city?
Correct, yeah. I mean, the blue outline is city limits. So if you see something that has blue, it's actually outlining the city limits. But yeah,
those are county enclaves inside the city. Okay, thank you.
Caleb, in the special meeting with ACHD, it was mentioned that this is not going to be something the public's going to use to go online and as an interactive tool. It's primarily for the use of decisions being made by the city. Would you, 1, elaborate on that, and then 2, talk about if there's going to be a key that, or you mentioned this is how we decided that, this is the level of service in one area or another. Is there going to be a summary or description of how you got to that? Not necessarily for each parcel, but just, a legend, I guess?
Madam Chair, so with this tool as it currently is developed, which is to say it's sort of a framework for something more later, there's no metric or overall ranking that we would be reporting on. It would mostly be kind of a line-by-line reporting on all the individual components, so where it is. If we did a map, we'd probably want to have some sort of key, and maybe that's something we do at some point in the future, but right now it's really about the line item report out for each individual one.
Madam Chair. I had a question, it kind of goes in line with what with the key, I think. Could there be layers on this to where somebody could just look at just fire stations and get and see the response time, or ACHD? Is it in the 5 years? Is it you know, or not? Is it in process of being widened or something like that? So you can everything right now is all of it together, right? So can you just peel out one layer at a time and look at that?
So there's individual components that go into a pretty advanced model, but it's all text, math driven. You don't see a report out of that on an individual layer for most of it. Certainly there are components of it that we pull into it. For example, the fire districts, the response times for those, that's based off of a geospatial shapefile where you can see basically this, only it's, are you low, medium, or high? We could potentially show that, but it's not in the final tool. The final tool is just a table that you would copy and paste and put somewhere. To some of your questions, though, the master mobility map has all those things you just mentioned. So with the 5-year work plan, whether it's in the CIP, and what the current state is.
Okay, so to be clear, this is not actually going to be in map format. It's going to be in a list of properties that somebody can click on and figure out what the level of service is. I guess I'm not understanding how.
Madam Chair, so someone being staff, yes. So it'll be in the planning tools that we use, and then they can, when they're doing a property search, they can pull that information up for whatever the properties are of interest are. It's not it's basically a table.
Maybe just to clarify, it won't be a list of the properties, it'll be how close the utilities are to a specific property you already wanted to know about. So you would select a parcel and then query, what's the response time for fire? And it would tell you, yep, you're within a ring of 5 to 7 minute response time or whatever. Or sewer is a quarter mile away. So that's what the table would report, is those individual metrics.
Hopefully, Madam Chair, hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, but potentially in the future, once we get some of this other stuff out from underneath us, we could show you a more visual interactive approach to how that tool works. We don't currently have it working on our servers right now. The consultant just transferred it to us, and we're still working, making sure it works with all of our databases. So, but maybe in the future.
Yeah, more to come on this. I think this is the start of something, and we'll probably continue to build on it.
Fantastic, thank you.
So I'm going to cover some future land use map changes. Again, the theme here is kind of the closeout, so those items you will not be seeing is the takeaway here. So most of the map is not changing, so it's going to look pretty familiar. Many of the changes that have occurred are just cleanups, so it reflects a new park being built, reflects a new school being built. It reflects some sort of land use decision at some point that wasn't necessarily super close, or was like a church occurring in a residential area, but the church north of it was office, so now they're just going to both be office. Just simple things like that don't affect entitlements. By and large, though, it's going to look very familiar. So I'm not going to go into any more detail on that. Some of the big things that are occurring, though, that are going away. So we are doing some land use consolidations. The items on the left here you will not see in the new comprehensive plan. So we're not planning to spend a lot of time on it in the public hearing because they're not in the plan. So one of them is the rural estate residential designation. Currently that is only in southwest Meridian, and half of that has already been annexed by the city of Cuna. We don't really have any viable way of preserving that, even if we wanted to. And honestly, it's not the best way to plan for services in the future, which is the whole point of the comprehensive plan. The low-density residential designation, which we are retaining, allows this sort of development. The focus would be on making sure we had the services dialed in. So, yeah. The remaining three there you see are all within the 10-mile interchange specific area plan. they are being consolidated to citywide designations or being absorbed by the designations around them, because generally they are inconsistent or they're duplicative with citywide designations. So, for example, that first one there, civic, we have a civic citywide designation. There's already a border around the 10-mile area, 10-mile interchange specific area plan indicating when it's in the interchange area. So if you see civic in there, you just know go to that plan rather than the citywide plan. So we're getting rid of the 10-mile specific civic, which is pink. We're getting rid of the green space and park, again, same reason. It's duplicative with a citywide civic designation, which is what we use that for. And then the last one there is the pipeline easement. That one is being absorbed by the land uses around them. So if it was gray sliver for the Williams pipeline running northwest to southeast in Meridian, the Williams pipeline doesn't particularly like to see that in a lot of detail. And because it was only shown in the 10-mile interchange and not citywide, we're simply basically being consistent with the rest of the plan. So again, you won't see any of these designations proposed in the new plan. Just wanted to be upfront, I guess. If anyone has any questions, happy to take those.
Is there a list or a spreadsheet of the changes made on the future land use map that's actually in text form, or is it just that there were map changes done?
I'm not sure. We have some spreadsheets, but the way they've gone through the process, you can't necessarily see every change from before to now. I do have one potentially. We talk about how we could share that. The concern I would have is I can't say definitively that it is comprehensive because the consultants did it for a while, cleared those with the steering committee, then we moved on to some different changes, and it wasn't tracked all the way through like that. I guess on that note as well, this is a new plan, so we're not highlighting those in the new plan that they are changes because it is a new plan. So we can look at sharing that maybe somehow better, but just a note.
I would guess the public would want to see what was and what now is in some form.
That they can do. So we do have the adopted map available online right now, and you can with a new plan, so you can switch those on and off. It's just tracking the reasoning behind the changes that I can't necessarily comprehensively explain that. But yes, you can definitely see before and after.
Okay, it wasn't so much the reasoning behind the changes as it was what, this was low density, now it's medium density. Are they taking the maps and looking at them side by side? Because, if you're on a screen, those sections are so tiny you can't tell what's what. So I just didn't know if there was going to be a list that said, this area was low density, now it's medium. There's just the actual specific changes from one to the other, not a reasoning for it.
We did that for the public draft that we had a few weeks back. It showed clearly all those highlighted changes where they were occurring. However, we didn't track that through to the proposed plan because it's new. Okay. Kind of a quick demo that's kind of ghetto. On the screen here, you'll actually see some of the changes, but there's a little hamburger icon there. It's the 3 horizontal slashes in the top left on the project website, or if you click on that, a legend will fly out. There's one of the tabs is a layers tab, and you can cycle through some of the layers in there and basically turn on the future and the adopted and the proposed maps. So that is available now. So this goes back to the previous slide here, again, before and after. You can just see the changes mostly within the 10-mile plan. The park designation there, for example, doesn't actually follow the pathway plan, so it's inconsistent, and also that's not how we show pathways in the rest of the city. They're aligned, so that's been condensed. The gas line there, the pipeline easement, that's been condensed, and then the civic designations are either changing to a citywide designation, or in this case, it's the school has no plans to purchase that anymore, and it was already approved with an option that didn't include it, so that's a cleanup. So this is a big one, again, things you won't see. So our area city impact is changing here. Hopefully you won't see some of the push and pull we've had going on in the last 20 years on our southern border down there. So basically the left is our adopted area city impact, and then the one on the right is the proposed area city impact. So we're hopefully kind of just putting this to rest that these are our growth areas, these are where we are limiting ourselves, and this is where we do intend to plan services someday. This one here is for referral area. So state code currently allows cities to, within their area of city impact, apply an area that doesn't have a land use, but basically says we're going to plan for some land uses. We used to have this over Southwest Meridian. It was basically a hatch on our map. It didn't have any colors. We haven't had that for quite some time, and the current plan doesn't have that. So I'm just making note that this text in there is not in there anymore. It is still a tool that the state does allow us to do, so we could use it. It doesn't have to be in the plan, but that might be something that comes up. So this one's a bigger one. The steps, you're probably all familiar with that. The developers are asking for a step up or a step down. Originally, the state code did not allow us to change the comprehensive plan more than twice a year. At the time, the city wanted some more flexibility, so this step option allowed basically what the city was looking for at the time. You will not see it in the new plan because it has been proven difficult for the public to understand. It's not very transparent because then you don't know what's going on next to you. And then probably more importantly, at least the city staff, is you can't plan for city services when half your city is anywhere from 0 to 15 dwelling units per acre, which is basically anything yellow on the map. That's the range we have to plan for. So this step is no longer in the plan. There are some alternatives in there. There's actually some allowances for density bonuses now. No one uses them because they have this. That's going to retain. And then there's also some other flexibility in the new plan you'll see. But the step is not in the plan. So lastly, and this one's loosely kind of a close out, but forever now, most every agency relies on a PDF for their published documents. We are doing that because it's an easy way to have a record, but the emphasis will be on an interactive website. So after we adopt this plan, and the website is available now, but after we adopt this plan, that will be more of a push that we have for the public to engage with this plan. So the policies are going to be interactive. You can sort them on the fly by whatever topic or chapter you're interested in. You can search them, again, on the fly. You just type in your words, and as you're typing, the policies that have those letters show up. So it's all the map is baked in there now. The policies are baked in there. The text is all live. It's a responsive website, so it changes whether you're on your mobile phone or your website. That's really going to be the drive moving forward. So we'll have the plan. It's not really being closed out, but our emphasis on it will be less. So.
Okay, so that basically concludes the part of the existing plan that you won't see in a new plan, right? Or some of the tools that we'll be using with development of a new plan, but they aren't the new plan. Some of the things that I covered there. So again, some of the next steps we've already talked about. Your hearing on the application is in October. City Council sometime thereafter. Complete the project before the end of the year. That is the directive that we're under as staff, and one of the reasons we moved your meeting up on the 17th to 5:30 so we can get through this hopefully in that one night, so we can stay on the schedule and move it on to City Council. But then the real work begins for us, and I'm including you in that us. There's a lot of things that people are, again, pretty passionate about in our community, so we're going to need some help from you, kind of deciphering and understanding what is the utmost priority to get done now, what maybe can wait, and maybe what's a lesser priority that, yes, still important, but maybe let's finish these things first before we bite those off. So once we get the document adopted, we'll be coming back to you and saying, okay, here's 12 things we could do, but I have 2 staff. So how do let's come up with, and we'll probably come up with a work plan and say, here's what we think that we could do this much man hours to get this stuff done. If you want to do more, we can, but I need to either hire somebody or we need a consultant help or whatever. And then we can kind of understand maybe how pressing those needs are, or if they can be spread out over a longer time and we just do it all in-house. So those will be some of the conversations we'll have. Again, we already know some of the things are listed there that are going to be pretty hot topics. Are going to be open space and amenities, housing, some sub-area plans, and again, depending on how many of those sub-area plans, they will all take some effort there. Neighborhood districts and understanding what that is. I don't know that we've talked about that before, so I'll just take just a minute. And I don't know if it's districts or associations or kind of what it is, but there's this sense of sub-communities within our community as Meridian. There's some things that generally bind certain neighborhoods together that they all have some, either now or want to into the future, share some same characteristics. we aren't using the Boise City model of, you know, these neighborhoods that maybe even come up with their own plans, but maybe these are things that say, you know, within, we'll use the Southern Rim because they are actually a geographical area that's defined and has membership and whatnot. But maybe there's some things in there where there's certain types of landscaping that everyone uses, or certain type of fence, you know, split rail fence that you go into this part of town that really says, oh, I'm in the Southern Rim. This has a rural feel to it, or it's architectural standards or paint schemes or things like that that really kind of define to some extent these districts or associations or whatever we're going to call them. Don't know how many that may be, or if everybody has to be in one, or if it can just be certain areas within the town, or what that's going to look like. But I guess that concept kept coming up. Hey, there's, you know, Meridian's getting to be pretty big. We're not all the same. There's people that have rim lots, and there's people that are downtown. Downtown kind of has their own little district, if you will. We want our little something that calls us out as individual, you know, community. So anyways, some more work to be done on that, really understanding what that looks like, similar to open space, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So I think that's, so then just in conclusion, again, I mentioned this at the beginning, but it is the community's plan, we believe, at this point. We've been working on it for a while, putting some pretty good hours into it. Technical analysis is there. It's not perfect, but I think it is darn close. So just we've kept what we think from the current plan is the most valuable, not just what we think, but we, again, collective we think have been retained and are moving forward. But we wanted to close some of those things out with you this evening. We think this new document, whatever final version it takes, will serve our community well into the future. So yeah, I think with that, unless you have any other questions.
Commissioners,
Thank
are there
you.
any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being
Thank
with
you.
us today. Caleb, you're going to continue with the open space survey discussion?
I am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me just get that presentation up real quick.
Madam Chair,
Or Fitzgerald?
can I ask Caleb real quick?
Yeah.
I don't want to get into the whole comprehensive plan thing, but looking at the kind of the initial action concept and reading through that 69-page document that you gave it, like the initial action says reworded or kept or whatever. Is that the action that the group is taking? Just so as I read through it, I wanted to make sure that I understood what the nomenclature was.
Yeah, so the far left column, I think was just a number.
Yep.
And then you had the existing policy
policy
language. And then I think we showed a little bit of our work in there. And then the far right is the recommended language you'll see in a new plan. Or if it's null or it says removed, then you won't see it in a new plan. And those
That's
are really the ones we wanted to daylight for you is, hey, some of these didn't make the cut.
Yeah.
The community doesn't value some of these things anymore, and we wanted to share that with you and say, hey, there are several of these that we axed and several more that got put in that we weren't maybe expecting. So again, just to kind of show the work there on some of those.
So is the new language officially adopted, or is that still subject to change?
Correct. So that'll be, I
Okay.
mean, Madam Chair, that's your job to some degree on the 17th, 15th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I was clear on how that read. Thank you, ma'am.
Same question. I appreciate that.
So, Madam Chair, members of the commission, I am pinch hitting for Cameron. He had something come up here last minute, and so I wanted to just get a little bit of feedback from you. I actually don't know. I shared with you, but I don't know how many actually took the open space survey. But consistent with the city's strategic plan, we are evaluating and trying to, kind of similar to the comprehensive plan, trying to understand from our community members what they value and what open space means to them. Even the Boise State University study they've done for the past probably handful of years now, at least that I think I've been seeing some of those reports, agricultural and open space show up very high as something that people here in the Treasure Valley value. But that can mean different things to different people and for different purposes. Is that agricultural production? Is that because you enjoy driving by a farm? Is that a park? Is that a pathway? What is open space? Is that setbacks between buildings? So there's a lot of different ways people define open space. So if we as a city or a community are going to look to preserve and protect open spaces, we need to understand what that means. Is that going and buying an 80-acre farm and leasing it so it's in agricultural production for the next 50 years, or is it taking that farm and making it a park? Or anyway, so a lot of those, but this is out of the city's strategic plan. Identify and assess the feasibility of areas within the area of city impact that could be preserved for open space, historical significance, or cultural heritage. So again, that's what a lot of people say. Yeah, I know Meridian used to be an agricultural. We seem to be losing that. What can we do to keep some ties back to that agricultural type of heritage? So that's really at the heart of what the survey is trying to get at. What does that mean to our citizens? Just a little bit more, yeah. So the first step in that then is to develop a survey with some options. And again, I don't know how familiar you are all with that survey, but that's some of why Cameron wanted to talk to you tonight, is get some of that feedback as you took the survey. This question I didn't really relate to, or I didn't like how it was worded, or oh, you missed it, you should have had a question on this, or whatever. Those are some of the feedback he was hoping to hear from you. So here's how that all kind of potentially plays out. I guess this still assumes that open space is of value to our community as you roll through this, because then we get into implementation of acquiring property somewhere and doing open space. So this is again on the city's strategic plan. So that's pretty much what I have, is just to touch base, and I can take notes. I actually have the survey pulled up on my Surface. If we want to, if you have it open or want to get particular about those, we can do that. But any comments you have or feedback, and then essentially, are you okay with us going out and doing this survey, or blessing of sorts? I think it'll probably happen. But if you had some real concerns about, no, we shouldn't be preserving open space, share those now, I guess.
What will be the scope of the survey?
So, Madam Chair, right now it's been sent to you, it's been sent to the Historic Preservation Commission, and it's also been sent to our Parks Commission. So those three commissions have all been sent the draft survey, again, kind of as your guinea pigs a little bit, to see if that we can get out of the general public what we'd like. But that's the idea, is that we would, and I don't know statistically valid how we're gonna, email it to folks, or you go to our website and take it. I don't know how it's going to be distributed, but it would be open to residents to take.
And the intention is to identify parcels that the city would own and determine the use of and maintain. Is that right? Or am I not understanding that? So
that's kind of step two, right? First, we got to understand what we're looking for. Okay. If the survey comes back and it says, boy, we want to just keep a red barn somewhere, then we'd go identify parcels that have red barns and talk to those property owners, hey, can we buy your red barn? If it's pathways, then we're going to be, hey, can we get an easement maybe through your property and accelerate maybe some of our pathway network? Or again, working farms, is this something where we want to, or an alternative park? I mean, there's a whole bunch of different concepts of what fits kind of within here. So.
And this is something separate from and outside of the comprehensive plan, right?
Correct.
And has this ever been done before? Has the city ever done this to this level where they've gone in?
Excuse me, Madam Chair.
Oh,
no, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
But it is real similar to what Boise's done with the foothills.
Okay.
If to use a similar example, it was something where, again, that community values foothills. They want some preservation, similar type of thing. We don't have foothills, but we're hearing from folks that they want some, stop every corner to be built out. Let's have some of these, I don't want to say farm, but some, again, cultural heritage tie back at various places. So funding and how we get there may not be the Boise example either, but
sure.
Just to kind of put that into, that's sort of the model we're looking at, if you will.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
Caleb, so after the survey results come back, what is the next steps plan for that? Because I think one of the things, when we get up here a lot, is, there's a 10% open space, or whatever the requirement is going to be. And we have the developers built to that. But there's folks on this commission and folks on city council I know, that's the minimum. We don't like the minimum. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of hard to do business when you don't know where the road goes, or where the final ending is supposed to be. And so is there a work group? Is there discussion that people get to come in and say, like, hey, this is where, we appreciate where our heritage is and what we want to do, and I think open space is important to all of us. But there's a balancing act in between property rights and what we want our city to look like, and people doing business, and all those pieces and how they mesh. So what's the plan and the end result? What you guys are going for?
So I can speak, Madam Chair, Commissioner, I can speak with some confidence in this answer, although I've not been intimately involved in this process. So again, I'm covering a little bit for Cameron, and Vincent up in the mayor's office are the main ones involved in this. But my understanding is, again, we do the survey, so hopefully have a better idea of what we're targeting. And then we as staff can identify potential parcels. And then depending on what it was in phase one, we'll probably determine if we need a steering committee or a focus group that digs in deeper, or if it's maybe just something we negotiate. You know, we have attorneys, we can just go, hey, would you be willing to sell us this? And again, depending on how big it is, if this is a program or if it's a one-off thing, and you know, people are like, yeah, go get 80 acres for a future alternative park that I can go and lease, you know, an acre of, or we co-op garden it or whatever, and we're done. Maybe we're done. So I think that is kind of TBD, depending on, again, the survey results and what we need to do going forward. Sorry, I kind of
no, there, I think Madam Chair, that was kind of what I was looking for. It's just kind of where is that? What's the end result? Our goal at the end of this thing, and I think that's to be determined.
The end goal, again, I think, is to preserve and protect some open space that serves a cultural heritage type function, but what that looks like and where, that's the survey, I think.
Makes sense.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal?
Just thinking about this and looking at the information that you shared previously about the serviceability, would there be some way to overlay those two things together in order to see this place right here, the serviceability is rather low, however, it looks like open space, some type of open space that is represented here could be put into that to help save not only money, but time and effort involved in trying to create something along those lines.
Yeah, Madam Chair, it's a great comment and question. So yes, we've already started to look at that a little bit, and as staff, again, when we'll let the survey go out. But to me, it doesn't make much sense to put an 80-acre parcel, you know, right at, you know, Locust Grove and Fairview or something like that. That's right there, and you got all these services running by. It really is probably something that makes sense on our fringe somewhere where we're not running our utilities past something that really isn't developed. And so whatever comes out of the survey, we'll probably be trying to identify parcels that make sense for the long-term viability of a taxpayer. We still need a willing seller or whatever that relationship is, but we'll kind of do a similar thing to the service impact tool. Is we have a willing seller, but it's right at Eagle and Fairview, and they want, you know, $20 a foot for it, you know, or yeah, we got something at Lake Hazel and McDermott right on our fringe. We get for a good deal and preserve it forever and ever. It's a good price, and it sort of serves as this transition between CUNA and Meridian. And so again, kind of depending on what comes out of the survey, but that's how some of our concern is. Well, you don't want to necessarily put agricultural ground right in the middle of your city. It could work, but we'll have kind of that hierarchy or somehow score parcels as far as how they score, how they look for doing whatever preserving open space means.
Great, thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland?
Just a couple comments for you, Caleb. One thing after I went through the survey that might be interesting is to track where people are from in Meridian, which part of the community that they live in, because I know North Meridian is very different than South Meridian, or maybe you put together a map that has 6 or 7 different areas and they can kind of pick which number they live in. Might be helpful just in informing what their scope looks like and make sure we get a good representative sample. And then one other thought is just maybe putting an opportunity in there if they want to have their name or an email address to keep informed for future conversations. It's always nice if you fill out a survey and have the chance to figure out what are the next steps and how do I stay informed on them if somebody wanted to.
Good, thank you.
I took a survey a few weeks ago, so I don't remember. Is there a question that asks how long they've lived in the city or in the area?
And I was thinking it was zip code is all we ask right now, but I don't remember tenure. If not, we'll make sure there is.
I'm pretty sure there is.
You'll see a definite correlation between the time they've lived here and their responses to the questions.
Madam Chair, just to confirm, the second question is how long have you lived in Meridian?
There is one. Okay, great. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal?
Great. kind of a question overall on the, for the way that when you look for real estate, the way that that's all broken down, is that something that can be transferred into this as far as asking for the location that they live in? Because right now that tool's a bit, when you go out and you look for real estate in a certain area, there's breakdowns of the different areas that are there. Is that something that could be put in there as far as a location that you're asking for?
Oh, I understand what you're saying. As far as that goes, those geographic areas run across, don't follow with exactly in city lines.
Okay.
So that wouldn't be, yeah, I don't know that it would work as the way it's set up right
Okay.
now. It doesn't stay within city lines. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. So now we will move forward with our applications. And at this time, I will explain the public hearing process. So we will open each item individually and then start with a staff report. The staff will report their findings regarding how the item adheres to our comp plan and Uniform Development Code with the staff's recommendations. After they have made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case for approval or denial of the application and respond to any staff comments. The applicant will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant has finished, we will open to public testimony. There is an iPad in the back where you can sign up. Any person testifying will be allowed 3 minutes. If they are speaking for a larger group, which it doesn't look like we're going to have tonight, then they could potentially be given more time. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond if they choose to do so. And then we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will have a chance to discuss and be able to make a decision or recommendation to City Council. Okay, first action item on the agenda is the public hearing for TM Creek East Apartments H20190089. We will begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. First item on the agenda tonight is the TM Creek East Apartments. The subject property consists of 8.3 acres of land. It's currently zoned R40 in city limits. And it's part of actually the TM Creek development. This is actually a second phase of the apartment complex that's already been built directly to the west of this site. So it's near the southeast corner of 10 Mile and Franklin Road. You can see here on the future land use map that the site is primarily high-density residential, which is consistent with the development that is proposed this evening before you. And as I mentioned to you, this is vacant land. Currently, in the surrounding area, we have some vacant commercial property to the south, some more R40 vacant property to the east. Directly to the west, we have commercial properties and apartments, zone CG, and then to the north, we have a piece of TNC R40 and some more commercial development that is under certain, they're all in different development phases at this time. So the applicant is here this evening to discuss a conditional use permit to develop the site with 235 residential units on, again, 8.3 acres of land. The site will develop with three four-story apartments, 6 garage structures, the associated landscaping, covered and uncovered parking, in a single phase, but the applicant will be phased based on their construction schedule. Access to the site. What's going on with my mic here? Maybe I'm better off with it off. I can talk loud, Dean. So access to this particular development is from adjacent collector streets, which are located along the west boundary and the south boundary, or at least a future collector street on the south boundary. The western collector street is South Wayfinder Avenue, and on the south we have West Cobalt Avenue. UDC typically restricts access to collector streets when local street is available, but in this particular case there is no local street available to the site. If you had a chance to review the staff report, staff had recommended that the applicant remove the easternmost driveway access to Cobalt Avenue and also require cross-access with the adjacent property to the east. Where the property owner to the same developer owns the property to the east, they're willing to provide that cross-access. And if you also notice in the staff report, staff wanted additional parking for the site. So this notched out area that you see here in the lower right-hand corner, staff wants additional guest parking provided on the site. So it's our opinion that it's better to keep the access point. Go ahead and support the applicant's request to keep that driveway access so that we can have a better facilitation for cross-access to the property to the east. So we are amenable to the applicant's request to strike that condition and keep that driveway location in its place, with the caveat that they provide the additional guest parking as conditioned by staff. And the applicant's also amenable to that as well. So the applicant's also, for this particular site and the number of units, the applicant's proposing 415 parking spaces. 48 of those are in garages, and 187 are covered carports, and 180 are uncovered parking, which is, so looking at the parking total for the site, that would give them an excess of 12 parking spaces on the site. As I mentioned to you, staff was concerned with the parking ratio, so again, this lower left-hand corner, or right-hand corner, excuse me, will be additional parking as they go through that CZC design review process with us. Open space for the site, the applicant, so in the upper right-hand corner, we have an open space exhibit for you here. You can see the landscape plan on the expanded plan here. So landscaping includes the 20-foot landscape buffers along the collector streets in accordance with UDC standards. And then the multifamily standards, the applicant's supposed to provide common open space based on the square footage of those units, and then an additional 10% based on UDC standards. So the applicant's proposing 2.25 acres of open space in excess of UDC standards. And then site amenities consist of a clubhouse and pool, a lounge. I won't go through all of it, it's in your hearing outline, but I just want to highlight some of those amenities that they're proposing. 24-hour fitness facility, a workout room, Wi-Fi throughout the facility, connections to the multi-use pathway along the north boundary. So again, if you had a chance to read the staff report, the applicant did submit alternative compliance, which was approved by the director in this case. It doesn't take action from this body, but they were asked to have reduced patio spaces for the private open space in lieu of providing more amenities and more open space for everyone to enjoy. So yes, this is typical with what they did in phase 1. If you also recall, the applicant came forward on staff's behalf with a UDC text amendment that allowed for that flexibility through the alternative compliance process. So again, the site plan, the landscape plan that you see before you tonight is in conformance with the multifamily standards and the open space and site amenity standards in the UDC. I would also mention to the commission that density on this particular site is above, on the higher end. So although there are 40, the overall gross density for the site is 28 dwelling units to the acre. So it's a pretty high, it's a dense project for this particular area, which again is envisioned in our 10-mile specific area plan and consistent with their development plan their development agreements that they have approved with the city. So here are the elevations that the applicant are proposing. Again, this is just an extension of what's already been developed on the west side of the site. So the applicant will have a mixture of stone or brick, stucco, contemporary modern style. These are consistent, again, with what's across the street from the site. Moving forward, all of the structures on this site, including the garage structures, will have to comply with the 10-mile specific area plan, the ASM, and the UDC design guidelines, and the applicant's well aware of that. Staff did receive written testimony from Mike Wartell on this application. In his written testimony, he asked the commission to strike condition 3H, condition 8, and condition 10. I did send an email to the applicant this afternoon working through some of these issues with the conditions. I'm happy to report that staff is agreeable to striking, again, condition 3H, which is the requirement to remove the easternmost driveway. We want to keep that in place so we can facilitate cross-access in the future. Condition number 8 dealt with the floodplain. The site is not within the floodplain. I called Jason Korn, who is our floodplain administrator. He confirmed that and said he was amenable to that condition being struck this evening. Staff is also supportive of that request being stricken from the record. And then condition number 10 was in regards to requiring a subdivision prior to getting a building permit for this development. In looking at the amended development agreement for the site, the applicant came back before City Council council approved an amended DA to allow them to pull building permits on this without having to subdivide it. And working with the applicant, don't necessarily want you to strike that condition, but I would recommend that you modify it as written in the hearing outline before you. So on record, we basically want that condition to read, the subject property shall be subdivided prior to issuance of occupancy for the first structure on the site. So let them get under construction, let them get that moving forward, but make sure that we have the roads and the landscaping in and the final plat recorded prior to full build out of the project. Again, the applicant did send an email in agreement with that change. Other than that, written testimony from the applicant, the staff has not received any written testimony on this project. So I'll go ahead and conclude my presentation and stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Bill. Do the commissioners have any questions for staff?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Seal.
Just on the, for better definition of the occupancy for the first structure on the site, does that mean the first inhabitant of one of the apartments that's there, or is that something that could mean somebody that's there living to show apartments or to showcase things or something along those lines?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, the idea would be the first apartment complex. So that's where they're going to start with this. I believe it's this central building. I'll let the applicant get into their details. But get this portion, this building under construction, so prior to getting occupancy and having people essentially living in the units, they would need to have the final plat recorded.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Casanelli?
I've got a couple. Bill, the condition 3H, is that to leave that driveway in place or to remove it? Can you clarify that for me?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, the condition as it reads is remove it or seek council waiver of it. And
Okay.
Looking at the intent of the code, typically we want local street access. This site doesn't have a local street access. So when local street access isn't available, we ask for them to reciprocate cross access. Well, we know there's something more intense going to happen to the east, and having cross access deeper into the site doesn't make sense when we don't know what's going to happen to the east yet. So in staff's opinion, looking at the intent of that ordinance, we felt comfortable that keeping this access and facilitating cross access somewhere in this location, if you can see my cursor, makes it safer situation for people, for that to happen, for getting that interconnectivity, and that's why we are supporting it. So I believe we have enough in code to allow the commission to strike that condition, as we already have it covered in the previous condition to require the cross access. So basically
striking it,
strike that condition.
Striking it will leave that driveway there.
Striking will leave that there, and we already have a separate condition for the cross access.
Okay, and then that's another question I have regarding cross access. Given that Cobalt is a collector and not an arterial, whatever happens in the future, couldn't they? I mean, would access off Cobalt be enough without a? And the only what I'm thinking here is the parking. I'm with you. I want to see the extra parking. Not having a cross access there, but when the property gets developed to the east, couldn't that? I mean, could it not get all of it, enough access off of Cobalt without the cross access? Does that make sense?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the commission, that is an option. Certainly, this road will get extended. We'll go up and go out to Franklin with another access, another road. But plans haven't been determined for that. So basically, our code, the way it reads, is we try to minimize accesses to collectors and arterials. So at this point in action, the applicant, they could come back once they get their plans solidified on that portion to the east. They could technically request another access to Cobalt at that time. But if we don't require cross access here, then we're going to have to say we have to give them an access because they have to have access to a street. We can't essentially approve a project without access.
Okay.
And I don't think the applicant would do that. Certainly they want to have as much connectivity too. It's good for business or whatever happens there.
Yeah. And then finally, Madam Chair, Bill, do you know what and I know, I'm sure Mike can answer this if not, but the number of units in the existing apartments, the lofts there to the west, do you know that number?
Madam Chair, I want to say 240? Yeah.
40? Okay, so total between these two of...
Plus 235 with this. Yeah,
Sorry,
to the
would
west
you
is
repeat
240.
that number?
240 units in the first phase.
Bill, did staff attempt to make any estimate on how many additional parking spaces that will allow in that section, or did you ask the applicant to do so? Did we get that far?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I would imagine if you see what's happening on the east side, you're going to get, I don't know, maybe a dozen more parking stalls there along that boundary. It's just going to be an extension. If you can see my cursor here, it's just going to be this drive aisle and then extension of parking down through here. So I imagine they'll pick up about a dozen more.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal?
A question on if we vote to strike 3H, you had mentioned that, and I believe you already answered this question, I just want to make sure that there's already verbiage in there that essentially if we strike 3H that the parking is going to happen there. Is that already part of the staff report and a recommendation?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the commission, yeah, there's a separate condition to add the additional parking, and there's a separate condition for the cross-access.
Okay.
So if you strike 3H, you're not losing that additional parking as requested by staff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward?
Madam Chair, Commission members, Mike Wartell, Director of Planning for Brighton Corporation, 2929 West Navigator in Meridian. Going to be a little bit redundant, but in doing so, I'll provide a lot more detail and answer all of the questions that, or at least the interest that has been expressed. Certainly the location there at the southeast corner of 10 Mile and Franklin, immediately to the east of Wayfinder Avenue, which has now been completed, now accesses to Franklin Road for this, this next phase. We're excited about this because it, in the 240 units that have been or under construction, the first building of that phase is now being occupied, and it's about 2/3 occupied at this point. The second building will be completed and ready for occupancy in November, about 2.5 months ahead of the original schedule. This particular view is a very recent shot from the intersection of 10 Mile and Franklin, looking to the southeast. You can see in the distance the TM Crossing project with the completed buildings for Meridian, Paylocity, and Brighton. There are 2 new complexes under construction back there. There's a lot that will be happening in this TM Creek area at the intersection of Franklin and 10 Mile. I'd like to just have you note for a moment the amenity corridor along 10 Mile Creek in the center of the photo. I'm going to come back to that a little bit later because it's an important amenity for the entire complex as well as the apartment phases. The first phase was kind of interesting in that the activity core was basically put in the center of the project with parking in between that activity center and the buildings. As you can see, both the concept in the upper left and the real-life photo down below. Great amenities, and we met all of the open space requirements. But frankly, in our design consideration for this second phase, we concluded that we wanted to really put all of the amenity value within, well, essentially all integrated into the center of the project. And that did necessitate consideration of alternative compliance for the fact that the code encourages the parking to be kind of in the center. But we think that we've got a design, and I'm going to show you some slides that illustrate what that really means to the benefit of the residents. The parking buffers along both streets, Wayfinder to the left, Cobalt to the south, include garage structures. There are certainly the carports, and those are illustrated in, well, let me use this slide first to get there. This particular slide shows where those structures are located. The garages along both streets behind landscape buffers. The darker area are carports. The shaded dark areas are carports. Then on the buildings themselves, that just notes the occupancy. The central core structure will be the first area of occupancy, and as noted in Bill's comments, the project will be started just as we did with phase one. Building permits were granted before the plat was completed, but the plat was recorded during that process long before occupancy occurred. That will be the same process that we do here. So even though the project will be constructed as a whole, the central core building with all of the amenities will be the first area occupied. The building to the west, the second, the building to the east, the third. To kind of show the real life buffering that occurs, you can see the structures, and these are as constructed. This is not a model, this is actual photograph of the garage structures along, in this particular case, an interior service drive, not a public street, with the carports adjacent to the buildings and in the center of that parking. So that just shows the type of structural buffering along with landscaping that will be along the adjacent collectors in the future. And Bill did show you the work in progress, architectural detailing, that the structures, again, in all 4 stories, they are subject to additional review and consideration through the design review and CZZ process, but they are up to date as depicted. Beginning now to look at a little bit more of the heart of the project, the central core activity area. You can see the photo to the left, upper left, shows the 4-story structure that projects into this open space corridor. The upper 2 floors are apartments. The lower 2 floors are the clubhouse, offices for management, meeting places, all of the activities that are essential to the project will be in that core area on the lower 2 floors. And of course, you can see in the lower green how all of that exterior open space then fits into this. So to illustrate that a little bit more, again, you can see the central core with the east building in the background, swimming pool along the northerly area. Conceptual at this point. I mean, there's details as they're working out, but you can see on to the right of that central core, there is an outdoor area that is separate from the pool that gives people an option for gathering without being in the splash zone. The next one shows the opposite view, looking at the central core from the east toward the west building, with the different types of uses in that outdoor amenity area. And this is just an illustration of what type of screening and overhead structures there would be there for people to gather in a social setting apart from the swimming pool complex area and the indoor spaces that would be available. Back to that 10-mile creek amenity corridor. This is as constructed, and you'll note a little bit hard to see, should have taken it with a drone, but you've got a regional pathway to the right on the south side of the creek. On the north side of the creek is a gravel maintenance access road for the Nampa Meridian Irrigation District. that amenity corridor, and we just today completed the paving of the rest of this over to Wayfinder Avenue that separates now the Phase 1 and Phase 2. So that landscaping and that portion of it will be completed very shortly. That will continue east of Wayfinder. Let me go to this next slide because this is it was a noted condition of staff, condition 3D. We had identified at Wayfinder on the left, the northwest corner of the site, and then a connection from the interior sidewalk system down to that pathway along 10 Mile Creek. Staff had noted that there needs to be access at the center and to the east, and we are in total agreement. That was already anticipated. We just did not get it on a plan. So what this project does is it turns the focus to the interior and to 10 Mile Creek, where the other one kind of backed up to it. Now, the one benefit in the other project is that all of the units that face 10 Mile Creek that were right there on top of it literally have been snapped up in a hurry. So the amenity value from a view perspective in Phase 1 and Phase 2, it basically brings it right into the heart of the project. So we're excited about that, and we're in obvious agreement with staff to make sure that we have central and easterly side access. So, and I'm not quite through with slides, but I just wanted to note that with the caveats that Bill cited with the deletion of condition 3H and also condition 8, and then the modification of number 10 to deal with the platting before occupancy, we are in agreement with the staff recommendation. But I want to illustrate those just for a moment. And Mr. Castanelli, you kind of hit at this particular thing. These streets are, again, not arterials. These are collectors, but it creates the connection system of the project. And if we did not have where the 4 crossed arrows are, if we didn't have that access point, it means that whatever cross connection would have to go to the center of the project, and it would potentially create more conflict and unnecessary traffic through the parking lot. So certainly maintaining that item for condition or deleting condition 3H is appropriate. There will certainly be another access point to the east when we bring another project in there, and it's also, we anticipate, will be not this type of residential, but some type of a residential component that would be proposed there, that we're still looking at the details. So that just illustrates the importance, frankly, of maintaining that easternmost, as staff termed it, access point for this site. The other one, deletion of condition 8, because in fact, even though it's adjacent to the floodplain, it is not in the floodplain. And that's probably best illustrated if I go back to this particular slide. You can see how deep 10 Mile Creek is in relation to the adjacent property. And so basically there has been kind of a benching from that well, in some cases it's 12 to 15 feet deep below grade. And so what we did is we lowered the grade within the corridor to get the pathway and the access down where it really becomes an amenity and kind of keeps people below the level of the adjacent properties. Now, I wanted to utilize this in my last comments because I think it goes back to some of the issues of how all of this is going to work together in the future. This is just kind of the bones of the system that we are working on. Shows the existing roadways that are completed. Cobalt Drive to the roundabout just between phases 1 and 2 of the apartments. Wayfinder from that roundabout north to Franklin. And of course, on the south end, Vanguard Way and that roundabout into the TM Crossing project. We anticipate connecting the two roundabouts this next year. In fact, we're working very, very hard to get that done because we need that north-south access. There will be in the future a roadway that comes through for Vanguard it loops down, goes easterly as Navigator, and then turns to the north and will eventually connect as depicted as that future roadway to about the half-mile line on Franklin Road. There's already an access point there that has always been anticipated that it would be the signalized half-mile access to Franklin. So in doing that, we will construct cobalt certainly across the face of this phase, the second phase of the apartments, and then as quickly as we can bring, and we will be bringing in a preliminary plat and concepts for much of the rest of that area that right now is not identified or detailed. But that will then help facilitate getting that east-west cobalt completion and the north access to Franklin Road. So takes a long time to pull these pieces together, but they are coming, and we're excited about it because there's a lot of great things that have happened out there and will. But back to just the subject at hand, we are in favor of staff's recommendation as we have worked with staff to clarify and modify, and we ask that you approve the project on that basis and would be happy to answer your questions.
Any questions for Mr. Wartell?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Casanelli?
Mike, which one is the half-mile lighted intersection on 10 miles? Is that Vanguard, or is it further south?
At the half-mile?
Yeah.
Actually, it's there is not exactly a half-mile because 10 mile is about a quarter of a mile north of the freeway. So Vanguard is nearly a quarter mile, and it puts Cobalt at another quarter mile. So Vanguard technically would probably be at the half mile, but it's not a half mile between the freeway and Franklin, if that's the.
Is that where the plan, is there a plan light? I mean, there's already a light. That's the
one that's signaled.
And which ones? That's not Vanguard.
That is Vanguard.
Oh, that is Vanguard that's signaled now.
And we're working right now on the warrant for the signal at Cobalt. That was conceptually approved by ACHD and ITD when we got all of our access points established originally. So we're working on that signal right now.
Okay, so there will be a signal at Cobalt as well. Okay. And Vanguard, so Vanguard currently has the signal. That's where the
correct.
And Cobalt will have a signal.
Yes.
Okay.
And in that regard, when you look at the almost the intersection there of Wayfinder and Franklin, that will be signalized as well. Wayfinder will be that all of the infrastructure for signaling is in the ground, was approved, but we have to just go through the warrant process with ACHD.
And will there be a signal then at that future connector to the east?
Yes, at the half mile. Yes, there will.
Okay. And so ACHD they were happy to put in an extra signal at Wayfinder?
Yes, that was all part of the original agreements when that project was when the 10-mile project was done and approved, and Franklin was in the planning process at that point, not quite constructed by ACHD, but followed on very quickly. All of those access points and determinations were made subject to future warrants.
Okay.
But again, the infrastructure for Wayfinder is already in the ground.
Okay.
Mike, are the residents from Phase 1 going to use the amenities for Phase 2? And if so, are they going to use the regional pathway to walk to that location? What's going to be their pedestrian access?
I don't know whether they're going to cross-connect in that way or not.
But they'll be permitted to use those amenities?
But the pathway would make it possible for people to flow back and forth, and I suppose if there are people that become socially connected between the two, they might share and use each other's facilities. But in terms of the required maintenance and so forth, they will be separate entities. Okay. But you can't stop social connections.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Seal?
Just couple of observations on it. The open area that you provide, the great thing about it is a very large open area. The only concern that I have about it is it's a very large open area that doesn't seem to have a lot of light. Is there any plan to address that specifically? I mean, I know there's hundreds of windows facing out there, but my mind goes to, it's a dark night and there's no light out there, and who's going to be out there and how do you monitor that? And the same concern is also because the parking and the way that the parking garages and covered parking areas are designed, there's a large amount of area that's in there where there's going to be a large amount of pedestrian traffic that's going to be going through there, and in the evening time, especially when you get into winter and it's dark at 4 o'clock at night before people get home from work, is there going to be more or augmented lighting in those areas?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Seal, I don't know what the details are, but definitely there is lighting in both the parking and in that interior area. Because you've got buildings and structures in there that will have exterior lights as well. It's a detail that I don't have an answer for that will go through the design review process, but maybe Mr. Gabrielson can answer.
Madam Chair, Commissioners.
Tell them who you are and your
Before
John
you answer
Gabrielson.
that, can you
Yes.
tell us what happened to your arms?
I'll show you the video afterwards.
Okay.
I was at a gym over here behind the Meridian Speedway and fell off the Olympic rings. Fell about 8 feet onto my hands, broke both my wrists. So
Sorry to hear that.
I had surgery yesterday. I'm on the up, feeling better.
Good.
Thanks. John Gabrielson, 2929 West Navigator Drive, Meridian, Idaho. Just to fill in on a few spots, Mike, the photometric lighting plan for the site will come out when we submit for CZC, and those. Not only are the garages well lit, but the covered carports as well have lighting underneath. And then we'll also have site lighting throughout. So it's bright side. If you'd like to go see 10 Mile 1 at night, you'll see it's very well lit. In addition, the pool area and those outdoor courtyards as well will have floor lighting throughout, as well as some lights up above, overhead lighting. So the courtyard will be well lit at night. We'll dim those down later in the evening when it's quiet hours when people aren't supposed to be in the pool. But
Right. Okay, thank you.
More questions for the applicant?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Seal?
In looking at the staff report that came out, for the water quality, there's a piece in here that talks about the long dead end water main and resulting in poor water quality, and then looking at the correlating that to the, and maybe it's just me correlating it to the feedback that came from the fire department, basically saying that this is a higher risk factor area. My concern is that there's not going to be enough water pressure. I mean, they're saying that there's going to be enough water pressure, but there's some details in there alluding to the fact that it might not be the pressure that they're looking for because of the dead end in there. Are you doing anything to address that, or is that being addressed?
Well, Madam Chair, Commissioner Seal, with the completion of Wayfinder, we now have a full loop from 10 Mile to Franklin. And then, of course, internally, there will be some looping there. So there may be a short-term issue, but not in terms of fire pressure. It's just that the easterly edge of this might, the flow of water when we get Cobalt completed and connected down to the other roadway, which will also then add another loop connection to Franklin, will solve all of those. But I don't know that we really have any concern for fire. The fire flow is not going to be an issue with these connections that have just been completed. So I don't know. I pulled up the fire department item, but I did not see a red flag that at least hit us. But we'll certainly look at it prior to the time we get our building permit to make sure that we are in full compliance. But I didn't see a red flag. I apologize if I missed something.
I'm looking at the report right now. Essentially, it just gives it a risk factor of 2 because it is a dense structure with multiple floors on it. So, looking at that and knowing that there could be a problem with the water, that's just a concern that I have of the project overall.
Well, knowing how long it will take us to complete this project, I would expect that there will be additional development and additional water connections before this occupancy, certainly before the project as a whole is occupied. So a lot of this is going, it's a work in progress as we continue, because now that we've got the momentum going and these projects coming along, we're seeing a lot more interest that will bring some of that unplanned area to development very shortly. So I appreciate the heads up on that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here to testify?
Madam Chair, no one
Anyone
signed
signed
up to
up?
testify
Is
for
there
this
anyone in the
item.
audience that would like to speak on this application? Okay. Mike, I assume you don't have anything else to add? Okay. All right, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Madam Chair, so moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for TM Creek East Apartments H20190089. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. So let me remind the commissioners that this is a conditional use permit, and so the decision will be made with us this evening, and that the requests from the applicant for the two items for alternative compliance were already approved by the director of the planning department. And I'll go at once.
I'll jump in then.
Commissioner Kessler.
Madam Chair, first of all, seeing the lofts, it's, as far as apartments go, it's a beautiful, beautiful project. I mean, I might sell my house and go move in there with all the amenities. Looks kind of a resort-ish. So from that standpoint, I think it's a great project in a great place. As far as the density, I think it's very suited, obviously, in the 10-mile interchange. The concerns I have, to kind of go on top of Commissioner Seal's mention of the from the fire department, a couple of things that I didn't realize it was a water issue. It just said their risk identification. This proposed commercial development has a risk factor of 2, in which current resources would not be adequate to supply service to this proposed project. Risk factors include firefighting, multi-story, and on and on. It doesn't mention water. I was thinking more equipment and personnel to fight that, as well as in the fire staff report number 2, it talks about the reliability. It says current reliability is 81% from station number 2, and does not meet the targeted goal of 85% or greater. So I'm a little curious why we're getting a recommendation to approve when the fire department is saying this is not, they're not there yet. And so I got a huge concern on that. The other one, and since nobody spoke out on traffic, I'm going to go ahead and bring that sucker up tonight. 10 Mile at 5 o'clock in the afternoon is a parking lot. I got off the freeway yesterday at about 5:07, and between the freeway and Franklin sat for at least 5 minutes, and that's normal. God bless ACHD again for their foresight and not working with the city to plan ahead. The traffic report from ACHD in here shows a peak hour count over the acceptable level of service right now, and that study was done 2 years ago. That's a 2-year-old study. I just don't see it. I don't see us approving this now. I like the project. I've got no problem with the project. It's the resources. It's the services that we have in the city. This project is, like in so many areas right now, we're so far out in front of the resources of the infrastructure that it quite frankly it's creating a mess in the city, and I can't support this project knowing that we're running off a 2-year-old traffic study. And I mean, in the very least, I would want to see the connection on those collectors before this starts, to where they can funnel traffic out to a light onto 10 Mile and get people, get some of that traffic off of 10 Mile. Those are my concerns, and they're huge concerns of mine. So that's my input.
So Commissioner Castelli, to be clear, if the section of road between the two roundabouts would take traffic down to the light, would that be something that would be
acceptable to me?
Acceptable?
It's my problem still, or the two big ones is I would want to see an updated traffic study from ACHD because it's 2 years old. And so they got traffic counts that are 2 years old that are, we all know those are completely outdated by now. And also something from the fire department saying that these are at acceptable levels, because we're talking about multifamily housing, 235 units there, 4-story, that if they're saying that they're below their acceptable level of 85%, and the other risk factor that they had, those two things right there, they're a deal stopper for me. If ACHD comes, if the traffic hasn't changed, if we've got, I don't know why ACHD didn't comment further on this, honestly, other than giving us some numbers and some changes on what they want to see on the collectors and whatnot. I don't know how ACHD can move forward knowing it's a 2-year-old traffic study and that those they're already exceeding their acceptable levels 2 years ago.
We see that on nearly every application, unfortunately, and I agree with you that it's not helpful. That being said, does staff happen to know when the fire station on Overland is going to be completed, and will that affect the response time for this property? You may not know that.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I don't have a specific date for you, but I live over there, and I can tell you it's going up rapidly. But I would imagine that's why it's under construction, to address those response times. So I can imagine that would probably improve once that station is up and functioning.
Will that be the closest station to this
Yes.
location? Okay. Any idea if they're going to have a new truck by that time? So that's one of the things that it discusses in the report, is that they need a truck, and then it's at least 3 miles from away currently. Do you know?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I don't know what's in the fire department CIP for this year, or what's coming online. That's something that they need to either continue this out, get more information, or move forward as proposed this evening. Again, a lot of these items, just for your information, yes, there's 4-story apartments. We don't see a lot of tall buildings in Meridian, and so I've been in several meetings where fire department representatives have been there, and they've stated that that's just it. They're not equipped at this point to deal with those types of structures because they have one ladder truck to serve all of these high rises, and that's the conversations they keep having. So I believe impact fees pay for some of that, but it doesn't pay for personnel, if I understand right. So again, fire department's going to have to get a handle on that and figure that out. But typically a structure of this size, it is fire sprinklered per code. It has to be. So that does help with some of those response times if there is a fire or something like that. That kicks on. But if there's always other emergencies that occur that are just more fire related, but there can always be other incidents that happen there. But that's really their primary concern, is just the height of these structures and having the right apparatus to fight it.
Madam Chair. I think overall I like the layout of the development, and I think I like this east version better than I liked the first one, because I like the way that they've allocated the green space and that there's some nice amenities that kind of flow together. One concern would be maybe with how 10 Mile Creek crosses across Wayfinder, that there might be some sort of traffic calming measure there, because one of the major exits for both structures, either the east and the west complex, looks like it comes out right before that pathway. So I worry a little bit about kids on bikes trying to cross over to the other side to go see their friends or whatnot, and having some accidents there. So that's just something I wanted to point out. Don't know that I necessarily have something I want to put in a motion around it, but it's something I want to open up for discussion too, if there's something we need to worry about there. My other concern was also the addition of more stoplights on 10 Mile, because I know it's a major commuting corridor that connects to a freeway, and the more stoplights you have, the slower traffic goes. because you got more things to stop for. But I always hate seeing traffic funnel onto the major roads that connect to freeways.
I agree. I go through that intersection every day, so I'm not excited to hear about 2 more stoplights going in and the time addition it's going to take to go through that area, for sure. Absolutely a need for a stoplight at Vanguard and that future half-mile on Franklin. I wasn't aware that they're going to put additional lights in at the quarter-mile on either side. I don't know that there's anything that if that was approved in the DA, I'm not sure that there's much we can do about it, and I don't know how that specifically relates to, approval or denial of the conditional use permit. More thoughts?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Seal?
Just to kind of reiterate a little bit of what's already been said, I like the concept of this phase in particular. Again, I think it's been referred to as a kind of resort style, and to me that's what it reminds me of. I mean, you could plop this in the middle of a nice little resort down in Mexico and people would be happy with the layout of it. So that part of it I really, really like. That said, I share the same concerns as the other commissioners with traffic and safety. I mean, the other part is the schools. The report that came back from the schools, although it was a little bit ambiguous, the numbers we're not maxing out the schools. However, the information that they have for the school numbers is a little bit dated as well, and putting in high density units like this is really going to push those numbers faster than they can reciprocate and build. So that's a concern as well. So just the overall growth of Meridian seems to be happening faster than our services can keep up with. And I don't think we're helping that cause by continuing to push things like this in.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Fitzgerald?
Well, I'm going to be the opposite of all of you, I think, because I think this is, I guess, where I lived or how I lived, but we're building a product to serve the people that are lurking to the south. So all the traffic concerns this is to avoid that. The concept of this whole area of 10 Mile Creek and the whole area was to get people out of their cars, into their shoes, and into bikes to work south. So I'm confused. This is the whole point of keeping people in this area. So I guess I'm confused. People are not. It's easy to get on the freeway, so that's easy for those folks. But a lot of these people who are living there are going to work 5 minutes away or 5 seconds away.
Nope.
Well, I think that's what, if you look at Silver Creek and some of the places over there, people that work at Citibank, they live right next door. And it gets them out of their cars. And I think the challenge we have is sprawl. This gets rid of sprawl. And so I'm confused, I guess. I guess to go the complete opposite direction of where you guys are going. Because this does not have a traffic concern to me at all. Because this product, it feeds the traffic issue. Because people are going to work where they live and eat from restaurants that are going to be up to the north part of the property. So I love the product. I think it's great. I guess I come at it from a completely different angle especially when I lived back in Virginia and in DC areas, you wanted this kind of product because you weren't in your car. You lived, you worked, and you kind of did recreation, those kinds of things where you live. And it gets rid of sprawl. So that's kind of it's a different product, it's a different product mix. And I think that the point is to get everybody out of their cars. If they do need to get in their car and go somewhere, the freeway is right there. So I guess I'm taking a completely different tact. And I think, I understand the fire concerns. I think the new fire station will alleviate the majority of that. I think the ladder truck is a whole different discussion. But I'm less worried about the traffic issues and that are brought with this kind of product. Because I think we need more of living near where you work so we don't have to get in our cars.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland?
Just one more comment to clarify. My concern was not necessarily about the amount of traffic that this product would cause, because I agree with what you just said. I think the more you put the dense housing closer to the interstate access points, so you don't have people funneling longer distances. The more it makes sense. You've got people close to the employment centers. My only hesitation was I hate seeing 2 more stoplights being added there. That was my
understand that.
I know that's not something that we may be able to control with this one, but I just wanted to clarify that. I agree. I think overall, I like this development. This is the right place for it. I think they've done a really nice job of planning out the 10 Mile Creek area and having the lifestyle center kind of scheduled in the middle, the employment center on the downside, housing up on top. It's a smart development. I don't disagree with that.
I would probably have a different opinion had 10 Mile been 7 lane going through. And we're not even, I mean, if you look at it, there's still a whole lot to be built out in that area.
I think
you can't stop it. What I would like to see, and I'm going to jump ahead to something that you said on that in the connection there. I agree with you. We could condition for a hawk signal or something else at the crossing of the creek there to be implemented. And if we were to condition it to get some of that traffic to flow to, I think it's Vanguard that has a signal right there, prior to occupancy.
No problem with that.
You know, unless they can get out there and add 2 more lanes on 10 Mile real quick. But I would also, I think I would want to see that the fire station on Overland built, if that's, and find out from the fire department if once that's built, if that will bring the response time up above the 85%, and if that's the case, condition it for occupancy to not occur before that station is finished and staffed.
So I agree about the pedestrian safety. I also have concerns, and this is not necessarily something that we are deciding, but just looking at the overall project that, you know, this is a commercial, residential, mixed use, right? And so with having a regional pathway, it's larger, it's intended for more pedestrian traffic, that I would recommend, and perhaps the developers already considered this, trying to protect that open space from you know, pedestrians that are coming through there that are not residents. I mean, I can see people assuming that as a public use park, depending on how much traffic, and I mean, I don't know how much traffic will come through on that pedestrian walkway, but once all of this is filled out, that could be an interesting situation for those residents to have a lot of people coming in and using that don't live there. So just as a safety factor, I'd like to see some sort of separation, whether it's landscaping, something that just sort of discourages people from using that space that aren't residents there. So just a little recommendation for that. Anything else, Commissioner McCarville? Any thoughts you'd like to share?
Absolutely. I think overall it obviously is a fabulous project in the resort style, and I think the lights are going to be there. I mean, whether we okay this tonight or not, I mean, those lights are planned to go in. I would tend to agree with Commissioner Fitzgerald that this is, I mean, what this whole corner was designed, this whole area is designed to be is, and the other stuff doesn't come until the residential is in and there's people there. So, you know, I know some of the work, the jobs and stuff are obviously on the southern part of that, but the other retail kind of things, you know, that'll help alleviate traffic because people use the facilities that are there. Those won't come until this stuff goes in. So that's my thoughts. And I agree. I think, you know, the fire station is in the works, and I'm sure with more structures, then that creates the demand for the equipment to be able to handle it.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Holland?
do you want to condition something with your recommendation of having some sort of landscaping buffer on the edge of that park? Or did you just want to leave that out there as kind of a thought?
Challenge with that is I'm not versed enough in this to make a specific recommendation what they should do, but I would just request that, and again, the public hearing is closed, and so they wouldn't have the chance to comment on this, but I would highly recommend to the developer that they consider some sort of deterrent from the public using that space that might be passing through on the regional pathway. I'm not sure that we can really put that in as any kind of requirement necessarily, can we? Bill, is that something that we can, what type of recommendation can we make, or is that something that's even, I mean, as part of the conditional use permit, we can add that in there, I assume. Are you tracking with me?
I am, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Certainly, it's a conditional use permit. If you want them to distinguish their common open space from the pathway, you can include that as a recommendation. But I would be cautious as to what goes there. I mean, certainly, as you mentioned, safety concerns. We don't want to wall people off, create dark spots, blind spots, have thick vegetation where we're not keeping eyes on the pathway either for our police department. So that's why the applicant has pulled that building down and oriented all that open space, because it does keep it more open and visible into that area. So if we do that, I mean, certainly you can do that with fencing, or you can do it with low shrubs. I think the applicant's well-versed in designing their projects. They would probably come up with something, but if that's something that you want them to distinguish that area from the pathway, I think they're fine with an open-ended condition and just work with staff on what that looks like. As long as we coordinate with the the police department, make sure, again, we don't create any side obstruction into that pathway system. Again, we need all eyes on that.
I think it's wise, but I'm hesitant for us to put it in as an absolute requirement of the conditional use permit. What do the other commissioners think about that?
We could perhaps recommend, we could ask for some sort of a separation, and then recommend something, either low shrubs with, a 4-foot wrought iron fence, something that sort of says this is private property, but it's not going to obstruct the views or anything. I don't know if it could just be a recommendation or.
Mr. Holland?
Madam Chair, I think this developer's done a lot of developments throughout the community, and I think if we give them the flexibility, and we've just made note that is a public concern, that they could watch that, and if it becomes something where there's a lot of people using that pathway in the future that end up going onto the property, that they would take measures to rectify it at that point.
I agree.
Because if it's not an issue either, I don't want to have them spend a bunch of money to put up fencing that makes it more restrictive for the residents to access the pathway. Yeah. I'd say we could kind of give them some discretion on just giving them advice here that they could be reactive if they need to be.
I agree. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I agree with.
Commissioner Steele?
I agree with the notion of having something that delineates the private property marker in there. At the same time, I really like the open concept of it, the ability to have that unobstructed view that's out there. So I have mixed feelings about both views on that.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to take away the appeal and the reason that they faced it that direction in the first place, but I agree with Commissioner Holland. I'm hesitant to actually make it a condition, but I think it would recommend to the applicant that if they haven't already discussed that or made that consideration, that they do so for public safety purposes. So Commissioner Casanelli, would you share with it? Have you thought about this more, and do you have some things that you could propose that would satisfy you, or?
I mentioned the two things that possibly conditioning for. And as much as I appreciate the fact that this is the overall concept of live work, I think it's great. I know there's some fantastic developments all over the country that kind of look at this. My problem is number one, again, the outdated traffic study here that we're probably, these numbers are probably well beyond that. And maybe not 100% add to the traffic. It's going to add to it, and then everything else we got going on in that corner, we're going to have to eventually figure out some way that all these pieces are going to work. And I could attempt a motion here to try and get something that would fit. But the two things that I mentioned, that if I'm going to see it go in, what I'd like to see is that the north-south connector brought down, the two roundabouts connected before occupancy, so that the people will be able to funnel out. Not looking at the map, to the name of that street.
Wayfair.
What is it?
Wayfair?
No, to the over to 10 Mile.
It's Wayfinder.
Vanguard.
Vanguard. And the completion of the fire station on, because I think it sounds like once that's completed and staffed, that the response times will be there. And it sounds like if that's moving along, that will probably happen before occupancy. But to put those two things in there.
So can I make a recommendation, since
Yeah.
I cannot make motions? Before we ask the applicant to, because of course when they put that future section in there, they're going to have to be, putting in the water lines, and it's not just that paved section, it's going to be an infrastructure issue as well, and I don't know what their timing is on that. But just, is your concern that the residents are not able to get out of the, can you kind of clarify more specifically why you want to make sure that that's extended to Vanguard? And they can certainly head up Wayfinder and make a right on Franklin if they're not able to exit at a light at Vanguard. I don't know what the timing. Mr. Wartell said this is a little ways out still, right? They haven't finished the second building for phase 1, and then they still have to put in all the infrastructure for phase 2. So we're a little ways out. I would guess that the fire department probably will be done by then. But before we ask them to add that road between the roundabouts preliminarily, I'd like more specifics on why you'd like to see that connected. Is it just for ease of access?
I think it's just it will get people off a 10 Mile. Those that are living there and that aren't working there and that are working elsewhere. I think if they're coming in off the freeway, it'll get them off 10 Mile right there at Vanguard, and it can also avoid. They'll get onto 10 Mile at Vanguard with a light, or eventually Cobalt. And I just think it'll get them, I feel that it'll help alleviate some of the traffic on 10 Mile by getting them, that light at Vanguard so close to the freeway that I think, and I believe Mr. Wartell mentioned that they were working on that piece as quickly as, that they're trying to move that forward as quickly as possible. And I don't know if maybe we can get with a nod if he feels that would be there prior to occupancy in that phase 2. So I would, if he's nodding in that they think they can get that done, that would help me in my concerns, because I do think it would. I do think that traffic coming, in the evening traffic coming off the freeway can exit Vanguard right there and get there, and then again in the AM hours, they can come out Vanguard, get right on the freeway, and alleviate some of that traffic. The traffic's gonna be backed up with 2 lights on there on 10 Mile anyway, so but it will help them flow a little bit better.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Casanelli.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in reading recent reports, and Bill can correct me, the station's gonna be done by March of this next year. So you've got not very much time. There's no way they can get it out of the ground and be occupied anywhere close to that. So those two things, I think, and we're getting a signal from Mr. Wartell, I think he'd be good with the north-south piece. So as long as it's before occupancy, I don't think you have a problem. Yeah. Those two things.
Yeah, I don't, to me, that's not, these units aren't going to create enough traffic issues to require the developer to put in that section of road bring in all the infrastructure that much earlier in the process from when they'll do it when they actually develop all of this. And traffic's going to always take least resistance, right? So most likely these folks are going to go out Wayfinder. Now it's not ideal if they make a left onto Wayfinder, another left onto 10 Mile, you know, to kind of come around the corner and head south to the interstate. That's not ideal for sure. But I think the timing of how this is all going to work out and how long it's going to take to build all 3 of these buildings, we're a ways before we get to the point that that's going to significantly affect traffic. And even so, how long is it before? I mean, is there even a plan for 10 Mile to be widened any further at this point? I don't think that
I don't think there is. So what's that going to do for everything else that's going to be coming for us? Again, this is adding, and again, a 2-year-old study. They had their peak traffic hour count was 1786. This is estimating another 103, but again, that's a 2-year-old study. So that number is probably over 2,000 right now. And we're putting in more and more and more and more, and
let me clarify. I'm not proposing one or the other or advocating for one or the other. I'm just trying to make sure that we're clearly putting on public record our specific concerns for the benefit of the applicant and the benefit of the public. Just, you know. So
I think if it's all going to happen, as far as that future connection from Vanguard to Cobalt, if we condition for it, it's going to happen anyway. So it's not going to mess up their schedule, I don't think, but it is going to put that there, that's got to be completed. But again, I just think that's going to get, if ACHD is estimating 103, that will get them almost right there at the, I mean, between Vanguard, once they get out onto 10 Mile from Vanguard, they're on the freeway. So I think that's gonna, to me, that would help alleviate the extra 103 really impacting 10 Mile a whole lot. And then likewise, when they're coming off the freeway in the evening, those 103, they're going to exit right there. Or possibly Cobalt, but most likely Vanguard. At least that's going to keep those 103 off the majority of 10 Mile. So it would help.
So to be clear, you're not necessarily suggesting that this be denied, but rather that we put some conditions in there for traffic flow and timing.
I think it's impossible to begin deny. It's impossible to ultimately. I would say
we're not ready for more development. I'm hearing, that we're not ready.
The infrastructure is not ready for more development. I mean that's obvious. Again, with a 2-year-old study, it's just, to me, it's ridiculous that ACHD is not on top of these things a little bit more. But it is what it is, and there's more development coming there. But we can't stop it, but we got to figure out a way to make it fit. I think, to me, just from what I'm seeing here, overall, again, I think the project is a great looking project. I think the way it fits with the work, with a work-live lifestyle, it's a great area up there. But I'm just looking at some of these other concerns. The fire, if we condition for the fire to not be completed, it's going to happen. So we'll just condition that condition will be checked. If we can get this traffic onto there, I'll be happy. I'll be okay. Does that answer your question there?
Commissioner Holland?
Madam Chair, I was just going to say, it looks like the applicant was willing to come back up if we wanted to reopen the hearing for him to speak. But I think reading body language and what we've heard from staff in the room, that if we were to put a condition that asked the applicant to connect Wayfinder to Vanguard prior to occupancy, they would potentially be amenable to that. So I wouldn't have a concern putting that in the conditions. I'd be happy to make a motion if anybody was ready for that, but if not, we can keep talking.
Madam Chair, are you putting traffic calming conditions? Is that going to be on your? Okay, because I think I know where you're going, so I would be amenable to where you're going, I think.
Madam Chair.
Oh, Commissioner Seal.
I had a question on the crossing at 10 Mile Creek across Wayfinder. There's been some talk about how to signalize that, basically? Is that something that we can request in that? I mean, because it's not their road, so how do we go about making that? I just want to make sure if we're going to put that in as a condition, that it's something that's a reality.
Madam Chair, I don't know if there needs to be a signal,
No.
but I think traffic calming there, like bumps or, a choker
Big
or something
white
like that,
lines.
something that shows that it's a
Sign.
crosswalk, or signage. I think that's reasonable. I don't think a light's necessary.
Well, I'm not thinking a light, but I suggest a hawk signal.
Okay. I don't know if that's necessary, but
I think a bump with some stripes and a sign is probably sufficient.
Traffic calming is probably the right verbiage.
Maybe is that
They're not going to
is that
get
something that
super
staff can
speed
you
after going around
Bill?
a roundabout. I mean, they're going to go around that roundabout. I
You
don't know.
got to see the way they
how
drive
fast
on my
they get,
street.
Well, no, I mean, and I agree with what Commissioner Casanelli was talking about as far as connecting Vanguard Way in, because the majority of people that, I would guess the majority of people that are going to be in here are probably going to be younger people that don't have the wisdom that some older people have, and laying off the gas pedal sometimes. So the same concern that I have for the 10 Mile Creek crossing goes for everything else, especially coming out Cobalt Drive or Wayfinder Avenue, and going into basically crossing traffic in order to get onto either 10 Mile or Franklin Road before the stoplights are put in there.
So I have no doubt, as we've seen in other developments, that people will start using Wayfinder and Vanguard as a way around 10 Mile and Franklin. It's going to happen. People are going to start driving through there. They're going to use it as a way to, to bypass the intersection, right? So the traffic calming measures are absolutely necessary, and I hope they actually look at that for that entire stretch, not just that one section, as this gets developed. I'd like to see that in some way, whether that's a speed limit or however that's done. It's not in our decision this evening, of course, but definitely, and we see that a big problem with Woodbridge right now, with people coming through there from Locust Grove to Eagle, and it's creating some safety issues for sure. Before you make a motion, I just wanted to say a general statement. As we're talking about the comp plan this evening, we're hearing a lot. We hear a lot from the public. Just general comments about growth, and about specifically hearing a lot of feedback from the public about too many apartment buildings come in, too many applications being approved for apartments, not in the right locations. Yet at the same time, we know that there's a need for some denser living, and we know that the code requires the city to bring in some additional housing options. And so, as we're looking at the city as a whole, this type of location is the most ideal type of location for this. So I know this is tough, because as the city gets more and more vocal about their concerns regarding density, if we choose to deny an application like this, or and say no, we don't want to proceed because the infrastructure is not up to date. I just want to, and we are looking at this specific application, but I also think that there is a lot bigger conversation going on citywide. And every time that we make one of these decisions, I know the commission is acutely aware of what they're communicating to the public about, growth overall, if that makes sense. So I wanted to put that out there.
And not to make this night go super long, but to add one thing that I'm not, and I said it up front, I'm not opposed to the project. I like the project. I think it's a fantastic looking project. I think the resort, I mentioned the resort thing as well. My issue is with the disconnect between ACHD and the city of Meridian, and that they're working at their own pace, doing whatever they want, and the infrastructure in the city is not ready for these developments. I'm not opposed to the development. I think it's a great development in the right location. My problem is just with the infrastructure that is out of our control.
I'm sure there's more than one commissioner that agrees with you on that. And I actually really appreciate the tools that the city's working on to see if we can't bridge that gap. I mean, I think those service tools that we discussed this evening are going to help with that. Being able to identify areas where service levels are higher. I hope that we'll make some headway with what you're describing. Because there's a disconnect. But back to the conditional use permit. So are we ready for a motion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
After considering staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H-2019-0089 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of September 19th, 2019, with the following modifications: that we would strike condition 3H related to the southeast access of the site, that we would strike condition 8 relating to floodplain, that we would modify condition 10 to read, the subject property shall be subdivided prior to the issuance of occupancy for the first structure on the site, that the applicant would work with staff and ACHD on finding an appropriate traffic calming measure for the pedestrian traffic on 10 Mile Creek Crossing with the regional pathway, to consider options like a hawk signal, speed bumps, signage, etc., and that the applicant would connect Wayfinder to Vanguard prior to occupancy of the structure. And to make Commissioner Casanelli happy, that the fire department would, the fire building would be constructed prior to occupancy on this as well.
I'll second that.
Absolutely.
Whoa. It has been moved and seconded to approve file number H20190089 with the stated modifications. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry?
Aye.
Oh. Opposed? Motion carries.
It's candy.
I just thought I heard you say no. Thank you very much. Okay, we all good, or do we need a break?
Good.
5 minutes?
No.
No. Move along?
Good. Keep moving.
Okay.
Plow forward.
Gonna have to hold it, Commissioner Casanelli. All right, next application. Excuse me. Public hearing for Idaho. We are committed here at the Planning and Zoning Commission. Public hearing for Idaho Fine Arts Academy H20190088. Let's begin with the staff report.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment prior to this one? Or do you want me to hold that?
Yes.
Yes?
Can you make a comment? Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. I just want to let, to be on the public record and let my fellow commissioners know that I do have a, even though it's part of West Ada and that's huge, I do have a student at Idaho Fine Arts Academy, and it is a small school in and of itself. I feel I can be impartial on any decision, but I wanted to let everybody know. And if any of my fellow commissioners have an objection to that, I would be happy to recuse myself.
Any concerns?
No, ma'am.
No concern.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Let's begin with the staff report.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This item before you is the Idaho Fine Arts Academy rezone application. This site consists of 18.96 acres of land, currently zoned IL, located at 915 East Central Drive, just to the north of I-84. The site is adjacent to the interstate on the south and is surrounded by properties zoned CG on all other sides. There's office uses to the west, the Idaho State Police campus is to the north, and the joint ISU Renaissance High West Ada campus is to the east. Most recently this year, the property was subdivided through a short plat process, creating two lots that you see here, borderline just south of where the grass ends. This also included the approval of a access drive along this eastern boundary. You may have noticed that the parking lot on the south there did just start under construction recently. It has been approved through the administrative process as well. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation is commercial, and West Ada School District is requesting a rezone of this property from the light industrial to the general retail and service CG zoning. The current light industrial zoning does not allow for educational institutions, while they are a principally permitted use in the CG zone. On the northern lot, West Ada has submitted a conceptual plan, which you see here, for a fine arts academy located in the northeast corner. Staff is supportive of the overall use, but the specifics of this site layout and building design will actually be reviewed through the CZC and design review process, so this specific site layout is not really tied to the rezone. And typically, the city does require a development agreement with any rezone application, but in this case, staff is recommending that none be executed for a couple reasons. First, the proposed CG zoning matches up with all the surrounding properties, as opposed to what it is currently zoned IL. So in the case, even if the school district plans fell through and the property changed ownership, any development would have to comply with the standard UDC requirements of the CG zoning, which would limit any uses to compatible uses with the surrounding areas, or would require a conditional use permit to come before you. In addition, the comprehensive plan does direct staff to, quote, look for ways to streamline the permitting and land use review process for approval of new school facilities, end quote. So by foregoing a DA, we would eliminate the need for the school district to come back to council potentially multiple times as they progress through developing facilities on this site. The city will still, as I said, review all proposed developments through the CZC and design review process to ensure all code and design standards are met. We have received written testimony from Jacob Rivard, a representative for the school district, and he is in agreement with all the conditions of the staff report. And with that, staff is recommending approval with the conditions listed in the staff report, and will stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli.
Kevin, is that the soccer fields that are there, is that school district property? Is that a park? What is that? And will that be remaining? Where are we at?
Yeah, so this whole area that you see here, bounded by the kind of pink trees and the parking lot to the south, is all school district property. I believe they currently have an agreement where they lease out that. They work with the Meridian Parks Department and then lease that athletic field out for events. From my conversations with the school district, that athletic field is planned on staying for the time being. Potentially in the future it could redevelop, but the plan is first to do this Fine Arts Academy in the northeast corner, potentially some administrative offices to the south there, still retaining the athletic field, but then after that.
Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward?
My name is Jake Rivard with Hummel Architects, 2785 Bogus Basin Road, Boise, Idaho. Thank you for allowing me to come and present to you, and thanks for the staff for putting together a staff report. Just wanted to say that we are in agreement with the recommendation that they have stated as earlier stated. Regarding this, there's not much to say about this because we haven't had a chance to really design. This is more of a rezoning. What you see currently on the site plan is more schematic. To go through this process, this is the anticipation of the area in which it will be placed. One thing that is not shown on here is that there actually is a dedicated turning lane that is going to be added to it as they construct this parking lot and this additional thoroughfare through there. One thing, as Commissioner Casanelli said, is that Idaho Fine Arts School is small, and there's a huge need for it to grow. And this West State School District has been wishing to do so for a long time. And with the city growing as it has, it's been very difficult to do so. However, they have the ability to do so now. And the benefit of having where it's at right now is instead of being an Eagle, you're going to provide it more centrally located within the West State School District to allow more students to attend as well. And there's also the added benefit, being right next to Renaissance High School, is that you're going to have two magnets of one fine arts and the one of science, in which they can create a really commingling of education. And our hopes to be able to create something really fantastic. With that said, I don't have any other comments to say. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Questions for the applicant? One thing I would say is, since it's unlikely that the actual building design or anything is going to come before us as a commission, my one main concern is nothing to do with the rezone, but I just want to put it out there, is the intersection right there at Central Drive and Stafford is dangerous.
Right.
People fly around there. so quickly. And so I don't know if the turn lane that you mentioned will alleviate some of that, or if, but I do have concerns about if they stay with this plan, the distance between the first turn in at this parking lot here and that corner is only about 240 feet.
Correct.
And so I hope that they redesign this in a way and that they will actually get access permission to move that farther to the east, because I think that that's going to be, unless there's something that addresses how traffic moves around that corner, that's an unsafe location.
I can't speak exactly what
Yeah.
is going to happen at this moment, but there has been discussion with the school district that they will come in and through the new entryway and through that roundabout and come on the backside instead to for that safety concerns, because that was brought up.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to be opinionated about that. Okay, so there's no questions for the applicant. All right, thank you. Is there anyone that is signed? Thank you. Jay, is that right?
Either one, Jacob or Jacob.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone signed up?
Madam Chair, no one signed up.
Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak on this application? No one? Okay.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
I move we close the public hearing on H 2019-0088 for Idaho Fine Arts Academy.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for H 2019-0088. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
I think this is very much needed. I don't think there's an aisle of the zone that needs to be anywhere close to a school. I mean, I think that's a reasonable zone change. They're going to have another shot at coming back to council with what they're going to design this with. That area is going to grow into a campus for ISU, for Renaissance, for West Ada. It's going to be it'll be cool to see it go probably all the way to Locust Grove, especially with the new orthopedic school, or osteopathic school there. I would just request that we have truffula trees be required as a condition.
Sorry, that what?
Truffula trees. The pink truffula.
The pink, oh.
No, sorry. Just joking. Sorry, it's getting late. No, I'm joking. But I think this is reasonable and should be absolutely the case.
Madam
I
Chair.
can't.
Commissioner Holland.
City council will scratch their heads when they're reading what truffle trees means, but.
Truffula trees, come on, work with me.
I would agree with comments made. I think this is it's not the right site for industrial. As much as I love industrial sites, this is not the one that you would put there. It needs to be commercial. So I'm in agreement that this should be a rezone to commercial, and think it's a great site for the school and good partnership.
I want to pick truffles off a tree. But in lieu of that, I would agree with I'm all in favor of the zone change.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner McCarter.
Absolutely. It totally makes sense to get that IL zoning out of there and make it compatible with everything else that's around there.
Commissioner Steele, anything to add?
Nothing to add. I can go for a motion if we're ready. I think we are.
Before we vote, do any of the commissioners have anything to say about the DA and the staff recommendation that to not need a DA?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
For the reasons that Kevin explained, I think it's reasonable, so they don't have to come back multiple times to get what they want for the school district. I think it's reasonable to not have a DA at this time. I think staff knows when that's necessary to come back before council and an application comes in. Mm-hmm. They can do that at that time.
Agreed.
He had shaking, so I think we're in agreement. Okay.
Can I add a condition on truffula trees? Nobody gets the Lorax, sorry.
It is the first rendering I've ever seen with pink trees, though. I love it. Someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Steele.
After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval of the City Council of file number H 2019-0088 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of September 19, 2019.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend H 2019-0088 to recommend approval to City Council. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. All right, next, we will open the public hearing for Nick Estate Subdivision, H 2019-0086. Let's begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. This is a combined preliminary and final plat application for Nick Estate Subdivision. This is a 1.4 acre piece of land zoned R4 located at 1180 North 10 Mile, so in between Cherry Lane and Franklin. The property is surrounded by other single-family home subdivisions with R4 and R8 zonings. The comprehensive plan future land use map designation has this as medium dense residential, which calls for 3 to 8 units per acre. This request is for 4 building lots on, as I said, 1.4 acres in the R4 zoning district. There is an existing home, as you can see in this image here, on the property that is proposed to remain. There's also an accessory structure that is proposed to be removed. The gross density of the proposal does come in at 2.84 dwelling units per acre, which is slightly less than the 3 to 8 units per acre envisioned by the medium density residential flume designation. As such, staff has advised the applicant that a request to step down the density to light density residential would be appropriate if they wish to keep this proposed configuration. The applicant has indicated that this is the route they would like to take. Staff supports this requested step down due to both this being infill development and that the configuration of the property makes it difficult to hit the desired medium density residential unit counts. Overall, staff believes that the proposed density is compatible with the surrounding residential developments. The submitted plan does show the existing home retaining its access to 10 Mile Road right here, while the other 3 homes take access via a shared common drive to the north. The applicant is requesting a waiver from council to retain this existing access as allowed per UDC 11-3A3. Staff is recommending, though, that this existing access be closed and that all homes in the development share the common drive access. This recommendation includes the installation of the required 25-foot wide landscape buffer where the current driveway is. And ACHD in their staff report has also has a condition stating the same request with the reconfiguration. In addition, staff is recommending that a minimum 20-foot wide cross-access easement be recorded from the common drive to the northern property line. So this would be somewhere in this area. I think it's about a 16-foot wide strip there. This is in the event that the property to the north would ever redevelop. This would allow them to take access via this common driveway and limit their access points to 10 Mile, so basically consolidating all the access points as well as we can. As you probably know, common drives are limited to a maximum of 6 homes taking access off of one. So this condition really would only be applicable if the property to the north redevelops with 1 or 2 homes, just kind of a backstop to help the flow of traffic along 10 Mile in the future. The applicant has also submitted some conceptual elevations, as you can see here. So single-story, single-family homes. We have received written testimony from Aaron Rush, the applicant's representative, generally in agreement with the staff report, except for condition A8, which is the requirement for the cross-access agreement that we just discussed to the property to the north, and to condition B18, which is a public works condition which requires the installation of a street light along North 10 Mile Road in accord with section 6-3 of the Meridian design standards. That staff is recommending approval with all the conditions listed in the staff report, and we'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Oh, Commissioner
Sorry,
Castello.
I did it. I'm just trying to look at something on my map. The driveway for the existing property to the shared driveway, is that distance I'm seeing as 41 feet? 41 feet, is that correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Castello, you're correct, yeah, 41
So
feet.
right now, an ACHD is okay with having 2 access points, 40
no.
feet?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Castelli, they're actually recommending that the existing drive be closed as well, and so that all homes are taking access off of that common shared drive.
Okay.
That's their recommendation as well.
I'm sorry, I thought it was, they were wanting to keep the existing driveway in that current home.
No.
No, okay.
I apologize.
Okay, sorry.
If I was unclear there.
Thank you.
The applicant please come forward? Thank you for your patience this evening. It's been a long meeting. Please state your name and address for the record.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Aaron Rush. I'm a land surveyor with LR Geomatics and representing the client, the owner of the property.
Please do speak directly into the microphone. Thank you. That
Sorry.
helps us.
Yeah.
That helps us with
I'm not
recording.
used to this. I don't do a lot of this.
Thank you.
So yes, we were in general agreement with the staff report, and I want to thank the staff for giving us all the attention that they have on this application. Especially seeing the application earlier that you guys deal with. Obviously, they're dealing with a lot of major, developments and things going on in the city right now, and so the attention we've gotten has been great. Of course, the owner was hoping to be able to keep this access to the existing home, but we understand, the traffic concerns and the the rules that ACHD has set up that that's going to be closed. And so the only two conditions that I really wanted to speak about was first, the cross-access easement that's being proposed to serve the parcel to the north. I think that staff may have answered my concern in that that would be limited to 2 parcels. My concern is if that gets developed into an apartment complex or something that has a greater density of people, that it's going to put more of a burden on this than there should be, considering it's only a shared driveway, not a private road. And I didn't want to set something on the plat that could in the future have them turn this into a public road. And so a little background on the owner. This is 3 brothers and their mom. They're not developers. They're not looking to sell this property or make a profit on it. They're actually reducing the density. Less cars on 10 Mile than than what could be. But because of that, they with the reduction of the density and the fact that they're not looking to make money on this, everything that they give up to the city is gonna cost them more money. And so my concern with that access easement being there in perpetuity is that now we've got cross-access agreements that need to be written. We got maintenance agreements that need to be entered into between my client and whoever decides to develop that down the road. Also, if it's created on the plat, in order to change it or make any change to it, we need to do a replat. And so it just brings up these issues. And right now, if you look at that, you go north. You can't see it on the picture there, unfortunately, but their existing access is right across the street from another road, from the crossroad, the existing access they use. And then ACHD put this other cut in there. So I'm not, I don't know why they did that, but in my opinion, I think that the access is there and usable for whatever could be done. So again, that's where I stand on that. The other element was the other item was the traffic light. So there's a traffic light already right there on the north side of the property. There's a crosswalk. If you can see in the aerial image, you can see there's a crosswalk there. And there's a light there. And so the Public Works rule, I think it's like 6-7, requires there to be a light every 200 feet. And the edge of their property line to the bottom here is 205 feet, and I've measured it. And so they're 5 foot, within it. And I don't know exactly what a traffic light costs, but I know, for my client, it's going to make it very difficult for them to realize this project for themselves. So I'm hoping that we can get a waiver on that requirement. I've driven up and down 10 Mile Road, and as far as traffic lights go, there's only, I counted, I counted 7, not counting the intersections, I counted 7 lights on the east side and 5 lots on the west side. And when you look at that over the half-mile section between Franklin and Cherry, that's an average distance of between 400 and 500 feet between the lights. So that's what's there now. And so I would like it if we could not do the light. Also considering there is a traffic light 300 feet, not a traffic light, but a street light. There is a street light 300 feet south of the existing one that goes into West Forecast Lane. If the city is not going to relax that requirement, they asked for I think it was a 35-foot light with a 12-foot mast. I'm wondering, I'm just brainstorming here, if we can't do something on this existing pole that's 200 feet south. So it's right about where they're proposing that light to be. There's already a cross arm there with 2 flashing lights to warn you of the traffic signal coming up. So I'm wondering if maybe we couldn't figure out a way to put a light on top of that, which would be significantly cheaper and more in my client's budget to be able to manage, if we can't get around the light requirement. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Any questions for the applicant? So I wanted to get some clarification about the cross access. So it's, from your explanation, my understanding is that the burden would be on you to not only provide the physical access from the private drive, but you also would have to do all the legal documentation, for that as well. I would assume that some of that would actually be on the future, or the current landowner if they decide that they want to develop it into two parcels. So what is your client's what is their actual requirement going to be for that? What is the city requiring
Madam Chair? So the city, again, that's been kind of vague, and I had some discussions with Kevin about that yesterday. I think it would alleviate my concerns if we could have some sort of development agreement or something in place that would put the burden on that north adjoiner to carry all of that. And again, he talked about putting the restriction on it of 2 parcels so that we wouldn't have to change it from a shared driveway. We wouldn't have to make it a public or private road. But again, even if it remains as 1 parcel, you could theoretically put, we don't know what's going to happen in 20 or 30 years down the road, but you could put a really dense apartment complex, some sort of multiplex there, and now all of a sudden you've got a lot more cars using that. So it may not, it's still their shared driveway, but now you've got more people using it. So I'm just, I'm kind of thinking this through and what that does for them as far as the burden placed on them in the future when and if that does develop, whatever happens with that. There's also the issue of a very shallow irrigation pipe that runs east-west right along that property line. It's about 3 feet deep. So that would also have to be mitigated. You'd have to possibly dig the line up and put sleeve it into, like a C900 pipe or something that's more robust than what's there now. So there's just issues with it that, when I looked at this, this is this is something they could leave as it is, a perpetuity with the house on it, but, they want to create this little community for their family. And I think to leave the burden on that for cross access for this, neighboring parcel to the north that we don't know what's going to happen 10, 20, 30 years down the road with it is kind of unfair burden.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Fitzgerald.
So, Kevin, it's a plat. You can add a plat note, or it's an easement only, right? The private road, we have requirements that they can't build onto a private road. That's in our code. So it's just a plat note, it's an easement, nothing's getting built. And it would be on the other developer to connect that later on, correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Fitzgerald, yes, you are correct. It would be a note on the plat and graphically depicted as a 20-foot wide easement outside of the landscape buffer, basically holding that just in case in the future there was development to the north that could use it under code, they would be able to. In relationship to the concerns that some sort of multifamily development would come in there and it would, create more of a public road, or that would require a rezone, or even having 2 single-family homes on there would require going through the plat process, at which the city would be able to see if it was appropriate to utilize that access easement. So I feel like there's backstops in place to ameliorate some of the concerns that the applicant has.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
Question, Aaron. In your neighborhood meetings, did you have a chance to talk to the property owner to the north, and did they have any thoughts about what they plan to do in the future?
I myself did not attend the neighborhood meeting. However, the owner is here, and she can answer that question.
Well, ma'am, I'm sorry. We have to get everything on the record, so we will ask you to come up in just a moment when he's finished. Thank you so much.
Taryn.
Not trying to cut you off, but we have to have it into the microphone. Okay. So is that clear that there might be a request to modify the plat to show the easement on there? I mean, you're already going to modify it because you're going to be changing that whole strip right there into common area. The staff had recommended that I mean, you're already going to modify this, right? Because you've got to put the 20 feet. Mm-hmm. You combine lots 1 and 3, and you're gonna lengthen lot 5, and so you'd add that easement in that section there. So you're going to do some engineering modifications to the plat anyway. So it sounds like that's all that would be required to allow for. Now, I understand your concern is about what they could potentially do with that, but they can't put in multifamily if there's no exit out onto 10 Mile without going through a private driveway. So they'd have to come before the city, do an application, and then somehow prove that they aren't going to use your private driveway to exit onto 10 Mile. It's basically what I'm understanding the staff saying. Does that answer some questions for you?
Yes, however, again, I'm a little concerned with placing that burden on them because, again, who's going to take care of maintenance? Who's going to take care of, and so I worry about my client needing to be involved with that and needing legal representation and having to put forth some effort to make sure that now they're taking their private driveway, and imagine this is your private driveway, and leaving that open in perpetuity to potentially opening that up to someone else's use. And as far as what the North Adjoiner is doing now, I don't know if they have any intention to do anything, but again, we don't know what that means 10, 20 years down the road, while my client is still living there. I suppose we could handle it with some notes on the plat, and I'd have to work with the city on that. But again, I just feel like it unnecessarily opens them up to something that they don't want.
Okay. Any more questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody who actually signed up to testify?
Madam Chair, the only sign-in was from the applicant, so.
Okay, all right, excellent. Either of you, other in the audience, would like to come forward and speak, you're welcome to at this time. As you come forward, please state your name and address for the record and speak clearly into the microphone.
So I'm Elizabeth Schranz, and I am one of the owners on 10 Mile Road.
Okay.
Okay. What's bothering me is I talked to my neighbors first off, and their property is probably a little bit bigger than mine, and they have no idea ever, unless they die and their kids take it over and do something. That'll be the only way that they'll ever change it. But the problem that I'm having on that easement is, one, we wanted a private road. We wanted to keep the traffic low. But I also have a big easement with the irrigation department, giving them a lot of land all the way down. See, that's another problem. And then you want to maybe down the road from now 10 years, put another road to go through there and cross all the pipes and dig up everything. That takes even more of our property. It's already been, I was hoping to have more than this on, for each lot. I'm used to living up in the mountains and having it. And now I'm keep losing more and more and easements, and it's getting a little bit more difficult to enjoy and have a little piece of land to just relax and not so much traffic. That's why we all bought together, and they're all taking care of me as I age. So, I'm lucky that way. But I'm really worried about that easement, and 2 signal lights blinking all the time. I think that's great. I don't think they need any more. They're always stopping for people crossing. I cross and walk Albertsons all the time. So it seems really fine. It's just hoping not to take any more of the land than we have to, So that's more where I'm at.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure. Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland, do you have a question?
I do, yeah. So
sure.
You're representing the property that's under conversation tonight, but were you at the neighborhood meeting and did you hear it all
I
from?
ran the neighborhood meeting.
Okay, so did the neighbor to the north say anything about what their future plans are? It's just basically
No,
that
they
they're-
said, glad to see your property being developed, and they had no plans of ever moving or doing anything to theirs. They just live there till whenever, and their kids and all their families come, and, you know, they're just happy to see that we're having family build 3 homes there, you know, so, you know.
Thank you.
They have nothing in the future to do.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. If that's everyone, does the applicant have anything else to add? Okay, thank you. At this time, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I move we close public hearing, Nick Estates subdivision, item H-2019-0086.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for H2019-0086. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Casanelli?
And this is kind of a question for staff, I guess. It looks like that the crosswalk is right there at the entrance to the driveway. I kind of went up and down 10 Mile there. The lights are fairly intermittent. They seem to be at some of the intersections and whatnot, but between there, I don't see many. That one's right there. I don't necessarily see a need for that light.
They're everywhere. I mean, like you're adding a light, and there's a light there, a light there.
Well, there's a light further down the street. There'd be
Yeah.
a light right there. I just don't.
You're causing it.
I couldn't get my map open on this, but
yeah.
So Commissioner Casanelli, what are you
I'm just
addressing the light,
questioning.
or are you addressing?
I'm questioning the need for that light.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Casanelli, just to be clear, we are speaking of street lights,
Mhm.
lighting, okay. So it's a requirement of the Public Works design standards that on arterial roads such as 10 Mile, we have street lights at least within every 200 feet. I wish Public Works was here to speak to this a little bit more, but it's my understanding that Council, I don't know if this is something that we can waive tonight or recommend waiving. It's also my understanding that this is a school zone. There's the school on the other side of 10 Mile. And I know that in the past, the city has been very much in favor of adding extra precautions. This is where their school children are crossing early in the morning. So
Madam Chair.
Add some context too.
Madam Chair.
Fitzgerald?
There is a street light on top of the crossbar for the school crossing on the corner of their property. So we're adding another one. This seems overly excessive, but
So
there's no way.
I don't know that we've ever actually had to make a decision regarding a Public Works request. So if you could give us some understanding of how that works on our part, or do we just have recommend that council make that decision and not put any or not give any opinions on it?
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the commission, certainly we're not the expert on public works standards, but our code does require certain spacing for lighting. Yes, there may not be the exact amount of streetlights along that roadway to date, but they do happen when properties develop or redevelop. And so this is one thing that triggered the addition of the light to meet their spacing standards. On arterial roadways, you want more lighting because you have more traffic, more people. So you want it lit up more. So again, from my vantage point, it's not within your purview to strike a public works condition. This is code. You're here to enforce the code. And Public Works says you need to put in utilities per city code. That's what UDC says. And so staff has to stick with that recommendation, and I would encourage you to do the same. Now, again, it's something they could take up with City Council as they get before them. But at this point, my recommendation is stick with public works standards. The UDC requires it. They're redeveloping the property, they're intensifying the property, and so they're triggering that additional street light. In speaking with Al Christie, I think the cost for those street lights is about $6,000. Just throwing out some numbers for the applicant. Just, it's a lot of money. Development's expensive. I understand that, but that's roughly the cost of a street light. City maintains the power once it's installed.
Madam Chair, another follow-up question for Bill. Would there be an appropriate way to say a motion that we would ask the Public Works Department to work with the applicant to see if there was some sort of alternative compliance that would meet the code?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Or as the applicant's representative suggested, maybe there's an option to retrofit the existing infrastructure in the area to add another light on it. There's certainly that option's available to you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Holland.
I think that would be my recommendation, is just that we ask Public Works to work with the applicant on finding a solution to the lighting situation. Overall, I'm fine with the way that the development works out. I think when it comes to the easement agreement, I would probably side with staff in wanting to still have the easement there just in the case that that other one developed. It's zoned for medium density. They're not going to be able to fit more than 2 houses on that lot in the future anyway, so it would meet that they need to fit with the 6 lots that could fit on that private street, and it's not something that they have to actually develop a road or stub the road. It just means that they have to have that 20 feet available in case that other user would ever do it. And as the applicant stated, it sounds like that property's not planning to redevelop anytime in the near future, so it's likely going to be a non-issue. It's just a matter of putting it on the plat to be available if they ever needed it in the future. So that's my thought, is that we would leave that condition.
It does, I mean, I would assume that it does actually affect the value of that property to the north as well, whether or not, so that's the reason we asked about whether there was conversation with the property owner to the north, because that is a value issue for them. Not that that's our purview per se, but we definitely don't want to see any of the parcels along that arterial devalued in any way, so especially with the high amount of visibility that's there. Thank you. Commissioner Holland. Any additional thoughts, comments, questions for staff?
Madam Chair.
Sure.
I'm just looking at this as the give and take. I agree with the putting in a provision to have them work with the Public Works to provide a solution to the lighting. But in looking at this, and I'm appreciative of the fact that it is a family dwelling, let's say, and but as the future, in the future, it may not be that way. So it could be sold to anybody. It may not end up being all families living there at a later date. So I think we probably need to think along those lines and make sure that we support the staff in provisioning it that way.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner McCarville.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to protect that easement, but I also think, I mean, $6,000 for a difference of 5 feet for that light. I think can be some other conclusions drawn for that. I mean, was it less than 1% of variance? I think it's probably fine the way it is.
Okay. Anybody ready to make a motion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
Unless anybody else is jumping up and down to do it.
You're our best motion maker.
I agree.
I don't know that I agree with that, but after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to City Council file number H-2019-0086 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of September 19th, 2019, with the following modification: that the applicant and staff would work with Public Works to see if there might be alternative compliance to the lighting issue, and that they could have those conversations before this goes to City Council.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to recommend approval of Nick Estate Subdivision H20190086 with the stated modifications in the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries.
Madam Chair.
Chair.
Commissioner Holland.
I move we adjourn for the Thursday, September 19th meeting. The public.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for September 19th, 2019. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.